Welcome back, my wonderful family of readers. If you're ready to be swept away by this tale of unexpected love and second chances, subscribe now and tell me in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow, another riveting story awaits you, and you definitely don't want to miss what's coming next. Now, let's dive in and discover where this extraordinary journey takes us. Isabella Sebastian's screams could shatter crystal, but it was the cleaner's quiet words. She just needs a mom. That shattered a mafia boss's carefully constructed world. In the gilded chaos of Bella Not, where power brokered deals over wine and blood, Charlotte Emerson was about to discover that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can offer a desperate man is hope. The chandelier's thousand crystals caught the light like frozen tears, casting fractured rainbows across the vaulted ceiling of Bella Not. Charlotte Emerson had polished every single one of them last Tuesday, balanced on a ladder that swayed like her faith in her life choices. Now, clutching her cleaning cart with its arsenal of spray bottles and microfiber cloths, she watched those same crystals tremble from the force of a baby's screams. The sound cut through the restaurant's carefully cultivated atmosphere of wealth and discretion like a knife through silk. Conversations died. Forks paused mid-journey to mouths. The quartet in the corner, who were paid obscene amounts to be musically invisible, faltered in their rendition of Vivaldi. Charlotte had learned to read rooms the way meteorologists read storm systems, and this room was building toward something catastrophic. At the center of the approaching storm stood a man who looked like he'd been sculpted from marble and dressed by Armani. Even from across the restaurant, Charlotte could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw clenched with each of his daughter's wails. He held the baby like she was a live grenade, which, Charlotte reflected, wasn't. Entirely inaccurate, given the explosive nature of the situation. Two men in dark suits flanked him, their expressions caught somewhere between bodyguard stoicism and barely suppressed panic. Behind them, a group of equally well-dressed men watched with the careful neutrality of people trying very hard to pretend they weren't witnessing their boss's complete and total meltdown. "Me despise, Signor Sebastian," the maitre d' was saying, his Italian accent thick with distress. Perhaps the bambina would be more comfortable in the private room, away from the other guests. Away from the other guests was code for "please God take that screaming child somewhere we can't hear her," Charlotte knew. She'd worked at Bella not long enough to speak fluent euphemism. The man, Sebastian, apparently turned a look on the maitre d' that could have flash-frozen water. "The meeting stays here. Neutral ground, public setting. Those were the terms." His voice carried the kind of authority that didn't ask for compliance, it commanded it. Charlotte recognized power when she heard it, though this particular vintage was darker than Bella Not's usual clientele. The way the other diners averted their eyes, the whispers that rippled through the room, the fact that the maitre d' looked like he might cry, all signs pointing to danger. Charlotte's grandmother's voice echoed in her head. "Baby girl, you got two gifts from the good Lord, common sense and the ability to mind your own business. Use them both." She pushed her cart toward the kitchen, fully intending to deploy both gifts immediately. The baby's screams intensified, reaching frequencies Charlotte was fairly certain only dogs and extremely anxious humans could hear. She glanced back despite herself. The man was bouncing the baby now, the motion jerky and desperate, like someone who'd read about soothing children in a manual but never quite grasped the practical application. One of his suited companions leaned in, whispering, "Urgently, boss, maybe we should." "Marco, unless your next words are a solution, I don't want to hear them." The baby arched her back, little fists flailing, her face red and blotchy with the effort of expressing her complete and total dissatisfaction with the universe. Charlotte knew that cry. It wasn't hunger or a dirty diaper or even tiredness. It was the cry of a child who'd been passed between too many hands, who didn't know which ones were safe to trust. It was the cry of a baby who just needed her mother. Charlotte's feet stopped moving before her brain caught up with the decision. 3 years of making herself invisible, of perfecting the art of not getting involved, of staying safely in her lane, all of it crumbled in the face of that desperate sound. "Lord, give me strength," she muttered, and before she could talk herself out of it, she was walking toward the table. The bodyguard, Marco, spotted her first. His hand moved inside his jacket in a motion that Charlotte really hoped was reflexive rather than intentional. Up close, she could see the jagged scar that ran from his temple to his jaw, a souvenir from what had probably been a very bad day. "Miss, this is a private conversation," he said, his voice polite but edged with steel. Charlotte raised her hand slightly, the universal gesture of "I'm not a threat," which felt somewhat ridiculous given that she was 5'4" and holding a bottle of wood polish. "I know, I'm sorry, I might be able to help. With the baby." Diego Sebastian's eyes locked onto her with an intensity that made Charlotte's breath catch. They were dark, almost black, and held the kind of shadows that came from seeing too much and feeling too little. But underneath that, barely visible, was something else, desperation masquerading as annoyance. "You're the cleaning staff," he said flatly, as if this observation alone should send her scurrying back to obscurity. "Yes, sir, and I have 6 younger cousins, 3 nephews, and I spent 2 summers volunteering at a children's shelter." The words came out steadier than Charlotte felt. "I know babies, and I know that cry." Isabella chose that moment to release a wail that probably registered on seismographs in neighboring states. Diego's grip on her tightened, his knuckles white against the pink fabric of her dress. For just a second, Charlotte saw past the expensive suit and the dangerous aura to the scared, exhausted father underneath. "She won't stop," he said, and there was something raw in his voice that didn't match the hard lines of his face. "Nothing works. She's been screaming for 23 minutes. He glanced at his watch, confirming what Charlotte suspected. This man tracked his daughter's crying fits with the same precision he probably tracked business deals and territorial disputes. Charlotte took a careful step closer. "May I?" The entire table went still. Marco's hand stayed near his jacket. The other men exchanged glances. That ranged from shocked to intrigued. The baby continued screaming, blissfully unaware that she'd brought a criminal empire to a standstill. Diego Sebastian stared at Charlotte like he was calculating odds and finding them all unfavorable. His jaw worked, muscles flexing beneath skin that probably felt Italian sun in another lifetime. Then, with the air of a man jumping off a cliff and hoping for water below, he nodded once. Charlotte set down her wood polish and approached slowly, keeping her movements smooth and unthreatening. "Hey there, sweet girl," she said softly, her voice cutting through the screams like a lullaby through static. "You're having a rough night, aren't you?" She held out her hands, and Diego transferred the baby with the careful precision of someone handling nitroglycerin. The moment Isabella settled against Charlotte's chest, something shifted. The screaming didn't stop immediately. Charlotte wasn't working miracles here, but it changed, became less frantic, more exploratory. Charlotte began to sway, a gentle rocking motion her body remembered from 100 nights babysitting her cousins. She adjusted Isabella's position, supporting her head, bringing her close enough that the baby could hear her heartbeat. "There we go," Charlotte murmured, her voice low and steady. I know. It's scary when nothing feels right, isn't it?" She looked up at Diego, noting the mix of astonishment and something that might have been hope warring across his features. "When did she last eat?" "2 hours ago. Full bottle." His response was immediate, defensive, the answer of a man who'd been interrogated about his parenting before. "Diaper. Changed it 20 minutes ago." "Is she teething?" A pause. "How the hell would I know?" Charlotte bit back a smile and gently ran her finger along Isabella's bottom gum. Sure enough, she felt the hard ridge of an emerging tooth. "That's part of it, but it's not the main problem." Diego leaned forward, and Charlotte caught a whiff of expensive cologne mixed with something sharper, stress sweat, the universal equalizer of rich and poor alike. "Then what is?" Isabella's cries had diminished to whimpers, her tiny body relaxing incrementally against Charlotte. Around them, the restaurant seemed to exhale, conversations resuming in hushed tones, forks resuming their journeys. Charlotte met Diego's eyes directly, seeing in them the kind of desperation that money couldn't buy its way out of. She thought about her grandmother's advice, about minding her own business, about staying invisible and safe. Then she thought about this baby, who hadn't asked to be born into whatever dark world her father inhabited, who just needed someone to understand what she couldn't say. "She just needs a mom," Charlotte said quietly. The words landed like stones in still water, ripples spreading outward. Diego's face went carefully blank, the mask of a man who'd just been struck but refused to show the hit. Marco shifted uncomfortably. The other men at the table suddenly found their drinks fascinating. "Her mother's dead," Diego said, and each word was coated in ice. "I know," Charlotte kept swaying, kept her voice gentle. I didn't know specifically, but I know. Babies can sense that kind of absence. She's not crying because something's wrong with her. She's crying because she feels the hole where someone should be." Isabella's eyes were drooping now, her little fist curled against Charlotte's uniform. The fight was draining out of her, replaced by exhausted surrender. "She doesn't know you're her father yet," Charlotte continued, the words flowing out before she could measure their wisdom. She just knows that everyone who holds her is temporary. Every arm is a new stranger. Every voice is wrong. She's looking for the one person whose heartbeat she heard for 9 months, whose voice is imprinted in her memory. And that person isn't coming. Diego's expression cracked, just for a moment before slamming back into place. But Charlotte had seen it, the grief, the guilt, the overwhelming sense of being completely out of his depth. So what do I do? The question came out rough, almost angry, but Charlotte understood. Sometimes desperation wore rage like armor. You find someone who can be that constant presence, not 17 different nannies. She saw his eyes widen slightly at her accuracy, but one person, someone she can learn to trust, whose heartbeat becomes familiar, whose voice means safety. Charlotte looked down at Isabella, now sleeping against her shoulder with the boneless trust of exhausted infancy. Someone who can be her mother, even if they're not. The silence stretched long enough for Charlotte to remember who she was talking to, where she was, and how magnificently she just overstepped every boundary of appropriate employee behavior. She was probably fired, possibly worse, given the way Marco was looking at her like she just proposed something revolutionary and deeply suspicious. Diego Sebastian stood abruptly, his chair scraping against marble. Charlotte instinctively curled herself around Isabella, protective instinct overriding self-preservation. But Diego wasn't reaching for a weapon or signaling his men. He was staring at Charlotte like she was an equation he couldn't quite solve, his dark eyes searching her face for something she didn't understand. "What's your name?" Charlotte Emerson." "Charlotte," he repeated, testing it. Then to Marco, "Take her information, address, phone number, everything." Charlotte's heart stuttered. "Sir, You're hired." The words detonated in the space between them. Charlotte's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "I'm sorry, what?" "You're hired," Diego repeated, his tone suggesting he wasn't accustomed to having to say things twice. "As Isabella's nanny. You start tomorrow." "Mr. Sebastian, I appreciate the offer, but I have a job." "You had a job, now you have a better one." He named a salary that made Charlotte's knees weak. It was more than she made in 6 months at Bella Knot. It was more than her mother made in a year. It was enough to pay off her student loans, with enough left over to actually live. It was also, very clearly, a deal with the devil. Charlotte looked at the sleeping baby in her arms, felt the tiny puffs of breath against her neck, and thought about all the sensible reasons to say no. She thought about her grandmother's warnings, about the way Marco's jacket bulged suggestively, about the fact that Diego Sebastian radiated danger like heat from asphalt. She thought about Isabella's cries, about the desperate search for someone to trust, about being 18 months old and utterly alone in a world of temporary strangers. "I need to think about it," Charlotte said, though they both knew she'd already decided. Diego Sebastian smiled then, and it was the smile of a man who always got what he wanted. "Think fast. Marco will drive you home and pick you up at 8 tomorrow morning." He paused, then added in a tone that brooked no argument, Don't make me come looking for you, Charlotte Emerson. It wasn't until she was in the back of a black Mercedes with Marco at the wheel and Isabella still sleeping in her arms. Somehow the transfer had happened without her agreeing to take the baby home. But here they were, that Charlotte realized she just stepped off the safe path her grandmother had laid out and into something that would change everything. Through the tinted window, she watched Chicago's streets blur past, the familiar made strange by circumstance and expensive upholstery. "You should know," Marco said from the front seat, his eyes meeting hers in the rearview mirror. The last nanny who made the boss smile lasted exactly 4 hours before Bella decided she hated her guts. Charlotte looked down at Isabella, who had one tiny hand fisted in Charlotte's uniform, even in sleep, unwilling to let go. "Then I guess I'd better be different," Charlotte said. Marco's laugh was dark and knowing. "Lady, you have no idea what you just signed up for." He was right, of course. But as the Mercedes pulled up to her shabby apartment building, Marco's face carefully neutral in the face of the cracked concrete and graffitied walls, Charlotte felt something she hadn't felt in years: purpose. The universe, she thought as she carried a Mafia boss's sleeping daughter up 3 flights of stairs, had a vicious sense of humor indeed. Chapter 2. Charlotte's apartment had never felt smaller than it did with Marco standing in the doorway, his bulk blocking most of the light from the hallway. He surveyed her studio with the analytical gaze of someone trained to assess threats and exits, his eyes cataloging the sagging futon, the kitchenette that was more kit than kitchen, the textbooks still stacked against the wall like monuments to abandoned dreams. "You live here alone?" he asked, and Charlotte couldn't tell if it was judgment or concern in his voice. "Yes." She shifted Isabella's weight, the baby still miraculously asleep. "Is that a problem?" "Boss will want security. This building," Marco shook his head. "No doorman, broken lock on the main entrance, fire escape accessible from the alley. It's a liability." Charlotte felt defensive heat rise in her chest. "It's what I can afford, and I've lived here 3 years without incident." "You weren't connected to Diego Sebastian 3 years ago." Marco pulled out his phone, already typing. "I'll have someone here by morning, discreet but present." "Wait, you can't just." But Marco was already stepping into the hallway, phone to his ear, speaking rapid Italian that Charlotte's 2 semesters of college Spanish couldn't begin to parse. She looked down at Isabella, who had somehow remained asleep through the entire exchange. The baby's face in repose was angelic, peaceful, giving no hint of the lung capacity she demonstrated earlier. Charlotte felt a surge of protectiveness so fierce it almost scared her. "What have I done?" she whispered to the sleeping child. Isabella's response was to nestle closer, one tiny hand curling against Charlotte's collarbone. Marco returned, pressing a business card into Charlotte's free hand. "Boss's private number. You call if anything happens, anything at all. Don't call 911, don't call the regular cops. You call that number." Charlotte stared at the card, heavy stock, embossed letters, no company name, just a phone number. What if there's a fire, a medical emergency? That number connects you to people who can handle anything faster and more efficiently than any city service. Marco's expression was serious. The moment you took that baby, you stepped into a different world. The rules are different here. You follow Sebastian rules now. I haven't agreed to anything yet, Charlotte protested weakly. Marco's laugh was sharp and humorless. You're holding his daughter in your apartment at midnight. You agreed the second you walked toward that table. He paused at the door. I'll be here at 8. Pack light, you'll be living at the estate. And Charlotte, he turned back, his scarred face grave. That baby in your arms, she's the most valuable thing in Diego Sebastian's world, which means she's now the most valuable thing in the entire criminal underworld of Chicago. People will try to take her, to hurt her, to use her. Your job isn't just to keep her happy, it's to keep her alive. The door clicked shut behind him, and Charlotte was left standing in her tiny apartment, holding a sleeping baby who had apparently just made her a target for every criminal enterprise in the city. She should run, pack a bag, leave Isabella on the futon with a note, and disappear into the Midwest where common sense lived. Her grandmother would approve. Her mother would be relieved. Instead, Charlotte carried Isabella to her bed, the only bed in the studio, and laid her gently in the center, surrounding her with pillows as makeshift barriers. The baby stirred, whimpered, and Charlotte's hand automatically went to her back, rubbing small circles until Isabella settled. Charlotte sank onto the futon, adrenaline finally giving way to exhaustion. Her phone buzzed. 12 missed calls from her mother, 6 texts from her best friend Keisha, and 1 message from her supervisor at Bella Knott. Did you just leave with a customer's baby? Call ME. She typed out a response to her mother first. I'm fine. Something came up. We'll call tomorrow. Then to Keisha, you won't believe what just happened. Also, I think I just quit my job. To her supervisor, she wrote, I'm sorry for leaving without notice. I won't be returning. Thank you for the opportunity. She hovered over the send button for a long moment before pressing it. 3 years of steady employment gone. The responsible choice, the safe choice, would be to show up for her. Shift tomorrow, apologize profusely, and forget this entire insane evening ever happened. Charlotte looked at Isabella, one tiny fist now curled under her chin, her expression peaceful in sleep. She pressed send. Her phone immediately rang. Keisha's face filled the screen, her expression somewhere between excited and terrified. Charlotte answered but kept her voice low. Girl, you better start talking right now, Keisha whispered urgently. My cousin who works at Bella Knott just called me and said you walked out with Diego Sebastian's baby. Please tell me you did not just kidnap a mob boss's child. I didn't kidnap anyone. He hired me as a nanny. Silence. Then, Charlotte Emerson, have you lost your entire mind? Probably. Do you know who that man is? What he does? My cousin says the waitstaff crosses themselves when he makes reservations. Charlotte had Googled Diego Sebastian the moment Marco left. The results were illuminating and terrifying in equal measure. Sebastian family operations included legitimate businesses, shipping, construction, import-export, and allegedly not so legitimate enterprises that the FBI had been investigating for 2 decades without ever making charges stick. "I know enough," Charlotte said. "Enough to know this is a terrible idea. Enough to know that baby needs someone." Charlotte stood, moving to the bed where Isabella slept. In the dim light from the street, the baby looked impossibly small, impossibly vulnerable. "Keisha, you should have heard her crying, like her heart was breaking. And when I held her—" "Oh no," Keisha groaned. "You've already bonded. Charlotte, you've known this child for 3 hours. It doesn't matter. She needs me. What she needs is therapy and a father who isn't a criminal." "Well, she's not getting either of those things, but she can get someone who gives a damn." Charlotte's voice came out fiercer than she intended. "I'm doing this." Another pause, longer this time. Then Keisha sighed, the sound of a friend accepting defeat. "Okay, but I'm putting my nursing skills on standby because you're probably going to need them. And Charlotte, be careful. Men like Diego Sebastian, they don't just hire people, they own them." After they hung up, Charlotte tried to sleep on the futon, but her mind wouldn't stop racing. She kept thinking about the way Diego had looked at Isabella, like she was both the most precious and most terrifying thing in his world. She thought about Marco's warnings, about the card with the private number, about the fact that somewhere in Chicago, a security team was probably already being assembled to watch her apartment. At 2 a.m., Isabella woke up crying. Charlotte had been expecting it. Babies that upset rarely slept through the night. She prepared a bottle with the formula Marco had left when had he brought that in, changed the diaper from the supplies that had appeared in her apartment seriously when, and spent the next hour walking circles around her tiny studio, humming songs her grandmother used to sing. "You and me, sweet girl," she whispered as Isabella's eyes drooped closed again. "We're going to figure this out together." At 7:45 a.m., Charlotte was showered, dressed in her nicest clothes, which suddenly felt woefully inadequate, and had managed to pack a small suitcase while simultaneously keeping Isabella entertained. The baby was in a remarkably better mood, cooing and grabbing at Charlotte's braids with the grip strength of someone training for infant MMA. Marco arrived at exactly 8:00, accompanied by a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and an efficient manner. "This is Rosa," Marco said by way of introduction. "She'll help with the baby things." Rosa immediately took over, producing a designer diaper bag that probably cost more than Charlotte's monthly rent, and efficiently packing supplies with the speed of someone who'd done this many, many times before. "You're good with her," Rosa said, nodding at how Isabella had relaxed in Charlotte's arms. Most of the others, Bella could sense their fear. Babies know when you're just doing a job. "And I'm not." Rosa smiled, the expression transforming her stern face. "No, Mija, you already love her, I can see it. That's why you might actually survive this." The drive to the Sebastian estate took them out of the city and into the suburbs where houses became mansions and lawns became estates. They passed through gates that looked like they could withstand a tank assault, drove down a tree-lined driveway that went on for what felt like miles, and finally arrived at a house that made Charlotte's apartment building look like a cardboard box in comparison. "Welcome to the fortress," Marco said, noting her expression. 12 bedrooms, 8 bathrooms, full security system, panic room, and enough surveillance to make the NSA jealous. The front door opened before they reached it, revealing an older man in a butler's uniform, who looked like he'd stepped out of a British period drama. "Miss Emerson," he said with a slight bow, "I'm Vincent. I manage the household staff. Please come in." The interior was all marble and dark wood, expensive art on the walls, fresh flowers on tables that probably cost more than Charlotte's car. It was beautiful and cold, and felt about as welcoming as a museum after hours. "Mr. Sebastian is in a meeting but will join you shortly," Vincent continued, leading them through rooms that seemed to multiply like cells. "I'll show you to the nursery and your quarters." Charlotte's quarters turned out to be a suite larger than her entire apartment, with a bedroom, sitting room, and bathroom that had a tub big enough to swim in. The nursery connected through an adjoining door, painted in soft yellows and creams, with a crib that looked like it had been carved by Renaissance craftsmen. "This is a lot," Charlotte managed. "Mr. Sebastian spares no expense for Isabella," Vincent said. "Your wardrobe has been prepared. I took the liberty of estimating your size. If anything doesn't fit, Rosa can arrange alterations." Charlotte opened the closet to find it full of clothes. Nice clothes, professional clothes, the kind of wardrobe she'd fantasized about when she was studying sociology and imagining a career where she actually helped people instead of cleaning up after them. "How did you?" "Mr. Sebastian is very efficient when he wants something," Vincent said diplomatically. Isabella chose that moment to start fussing, and Charlotte automatically began the sway and bounce combination that had worked at 2 a.m. "There's a bottle warming in the kitchen," Rosa said, appearing in the doorway. "I'll bring it up." Left alone in the nursery, Charlotte walked to the window. The view overlooked manicured gardens, a pool that sparkled in the morning sun, and in the distance, what looked like a small lake. It was beautiful. It was perfect. It was a cage, she realized. Very pretty, very expensive cage. "What do you think, Bella?" Charlotte asked the baby. "Can we make this work?" Isabella responded by grabbing Charlotte's nose and giggling, apparently finding this the height of comedy. The door opened, and Charlotte turned to find Diego Sebastian standing in the doorway, looking decidedly different from the desperate father of the night before. He was in a suit that probably cost more than a semester of Charlotte's college tuition, his hair still damp from a shower, his expression unreadable. "She's smiling," he said, and there was something almost accusatory in his tone, as if Charlotte had performed magic he didn't quite trust. "Babies smile in the morning. It's one of their better features." Diego stepped into the room, and Charlotte noticed he moved like someone always aware of exits and threats, his body language screaming trained fighter despite the civilized veneer. He stopped a few feet away, close enough to see Isabella but far enough to maintain distance. "We need to establish ground rules," he said. "Okay. You don't leave the estate without my permission and security detail. You don't speak to anyone about me, my family, or my business. You don't answer questions from reporters, police, or rival families. You. Rival families, Charlotte interrupted. People are actually going to come after a baby. Diego's expression went even colder. In my world, Miss Emerson, children are leverage. Isabella is valuable precisely because she's mine. You need to understand that every moment of every day. Charlotte looked down at the baby in her arms, at her complete trust and innocence, and felt anger spark in her chest. That's insane. That's reality. Diego pulled out his phone, showing her a photo of a man Charlotte didn't recognize. This is Victor Kozlov. Last night's meeting was supposed to establish new territorial boundaries. The meeting you interrupted. Victor has 3 sons, all of whom would happily kidnap Isabella to force my cooperation. He's not the only one. He swiped to another photo, and another. A rogues gallery of dangerous men who apparently all wanted to use a baby as a bargaining chip. So I'm supposed to keep her locked in this house forever, Charlotte demanded. I'm supposed to keep her alive. Everything else is secondary. Diego's jaw tightened. Her mother died bringing her into this world. I won't let this world take her out of it. There was something raw in his voice, a grief he was trying to bury under pragmatism and control. Charlotte softened slightly. What was her name? Isabella's mother. Diego's face went blank, the mask slamming back into place. That's not relevant to your job. It's relevant to your daughter. She's going to ask someday. Then I'll deal with it someday. Right now, we focus on keeping her alive and happy in that order. He moved toward the door, clearly done with the conversation. Vincent will go over the security protocols. Rosa will help with Isabella's schedule and preferences. Marco will. Mr. Sebastian, Charlotte's voice stopped him mid-stride. Diego. He turned, eyebrows raised at her use of his first name. I'm not afraid of you, Charlotte said quietly. I'm not afraid of your world or your rules or whatever threatens you think you can make. I'm here for her. She nodded at Isabella. Just her. So if you want me to stay, you need to understand that I'm going to do what's best for this baby, not what's most convenient for your criminal empire. The silence stretched. Marco appeared in the doorway, hand reflexively moving toward his jacket, but Diego waved him off. Then slowly, Diego Sebastian smiled. It was a real smile this time, not the predatory one from the restaurant, but something genuine and slightly amused. You're either very brave or very stupid, Miss Emerson. Charlotte and I'm probably both. Then we'll get along just fine. He paused at the door. Rosa will show you the grounds. Don't let Bella near the koi pond. She has a disturbing fascination with trying to catch the fish. After he left, Charlotte released a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Rosa appeared with the bottle, her expression somewhere between impressed and concerned. Nobody talks to Mr. Sebastian like that, she said. Maybe somebody should. Rosa laughed, a warm sound that filled the nursery. You're going to shake things up around here. Good. This house could use some shaking. As Charlotte fed Isabella, watching the baby's eyes drift closed in contentment. She thought about cages and freedom, about danger and safety, about the fact that she just challenged a mafia boss in his own home. Her grandmother would not approve. But as Isabella's tiny hand curled around Charlotte's finger, holding on like Charlotte was the only solid thing in an uncertain world, Charlotte decided that maybe sometimes the right choice wasn't the safe one. Sometimes it was just the necessary one. Chapter 3. The Sebastian estate operated on schedules more precise than Swiss watches, and routines more sacred than religious ceremonies. Charlotte discovered this over the next 3 days as she settled into a rhythm that felt both surreal and strangely natural. Isabella woke at 6:30 a.m. without fail, her internal clock apparently set to unreasonably early. Charlotte would feed her, change her, and spend the next hour in the nursery playing games that mostly involved Isabella trying to eat everything she could reach, while Charlotte gently redirected her toward age-appropriate toys that cost more than most cars. At 8 a.m., Vincent would appear with breakfast on a tray, real food, not the cereal and coffee Charlotte had survived on for years, but eggs cooked to perfection, fresh fruit, pastries from a bakery that probably had a Michelin star. The first morning, Charlotte had tried to eat in the kitchen with the staff. Vincent had politely but firmly explained that Mr. Sebastian insists you take your meals in comfort. Translation: Diego Sebastian wanted her separated from the household staff, kept in a category all her own. Neither family nor employee, but something in between that didn't have a name yet. Diego himself was a ghost in his own house. Charlotte heard him, his voice carrying through the halls in conversations that always seemed to involve money, territories, or thinly veiled threats. But she rarely saw him. He'd appear in the nursery doorway at odd hours, watching Isabella with an expression Charlotte couldn't quite read, then disappear before Charlotte could say more than hello. He does that, Rosa explained on the third day as they gave Isabella a bath in a tub that had more features than Charlotte's first car. Watches her like he's memorizing every detail but won't come close, like he's afraid he'll break her. Or like he's afraid she'll break him, Charlotte murmured, watching Isabella splash with unrestrained joy. Rosa's eyes sharpened. You see that? Most people just see the boss, the dangerous man. They don't see the father. I see both. That's what makes it complicated. That afternoon, Marco took Charlotte on what he called a perimeter orientation, and what Charlotte called a terrifying tour of everything that could go wrong. He showed her the panic buttons hidden in every room. Press once for security, twice for medical, 3 times for immediate extraction. The safe room behind a false wall in the nursery, reinforced steel, independent air supply, enough provisions for 3 days. And the various security personnel stationed around the estate. Don't scream if you see armed men on the grounds. They're supposed to be there. You're trying to scare me, Charlotte said as they walked past the 4th guard post. I'm trying to prepare you. Marco stopped, his scarred face serious. 3 years ago, the Volkov family hit the Castellano estate, took out the guards, breached the house, grabbed the Castellano daughter. She was 6. They sent her back in pieces over the course of 2 weeks. Charlotte felt bile rise in her throat. Why are you telling me this? Because you need to understand what we're protecting Bella from. This isn't theoretical danger. It's real, it's brutal, and it doesn't care that she's a baby. Marco's voice softened slightly. You stepped into a war zone, Charlotte. I need you to take it seriously. I do take it seriously. Then prove it. Tomorrow you start weapons training. Charlotte stopped walking. Excuse me. Boss's orders. You're Bella's primary caregiver, which makes you her first line of defense. You need to know how to shoot. I'm not shooting anyone. Let's hope you never have to, but if someone comes for that baby, I want you to have options beyond screaming and hoping for the best. Marco's expression brooked no argument. 7 a.m., private range on the south end of the property. Wear comfortable. Clothes. That evening, Charlotte was feeding Isabella her dinner, a process that involved more food on the baby than in her. When Diego finally appeared for more than his usual ghost viewing. She's covered in sweet potato, he observed from the doorway. She's exploring texture through tactile learning, Charlotte replied, wiping orange goop from Isabella's eyebrow. Or she's just messy. Honestly, it could go either way. Diego moved closer, drawn by some invisible thread. Isabella immediately reached for him, hands opening and closing in the universal baby gesture for pick-me-up. He hesitated, and Charlotte saw genuine fear flash across his face. She wants you to hold her, Charlotte said gently. She's covered in food. It's just sweet potato, it washes off. Charlotte stood, shifting Isabella toward him. Come on, she's your daughter. Diego looked at Isabella like she was a bomb he'd been asked to defuse. Slowly, carefully, he reached out and took her. His hands were huge compared to Isabella's tiny body, and he held her with the kind of rigid tension usually reserved for handling unstable explosives. Isabella promptly grabbed his nose with both sweet potato-covered hands and laughed. For a moment, Diego's entire face transformed. The hard lines softened, the shadows lifted, and Charlotte saw the man he might have been in a different life. Then Isabella sneezed directly into his face, and the moment shattered into something so absurdly human that Charlotte couldn't help but laugh. She's disgusting, Diego said, but there was no heat in it. If anything, he sounded almost fond. She's 18 months old. Disgusting is basically their superpower. Charlotte grabbed a wet wipe and started cleaning Isabella's hands. You should do this more often. Hold her, I mean. I hold her. For 30 seconds before you hand her to someone else. She needs you, not just as the person who pays for things, but as her father. Diego's jaw tightened. I don't know how to be a father. Nobody does. It's not like they give you a manual. Charlotte met his eyes. But you're already doing it wrong by avoiding her. I'm protecting her. By keeping her at arm's length. That's not protection, that's abandonment with better security. Charlotte took Isabella back more gently than her words. I get it. You're scared. She's this tiny, fragile thing in a world you know is dangerous. But she needs you to be scared and present, not scared and absent. Diego's expression went cold. You've been here 3 days and you think you can psychoanalyze me. I think I can see a father who loves his daughter but doesn't know how to show it. I think I can see a man who's grieving someone he lost but won't talk about it. And I think, Charlotte paused, wondering if she was about to get herself fired. I think Isabella's mother would want you to do better than this. The temperature in the room dropped about 20 degrees. Diego's eyes went flat and dangerous, and Charlotte remembered suddenly that this man had probably done things that would haunt her nightmares. You don't know anything about her mother, he said quietly, which was somehow more terrifying than if he'd yelled. You're right, I don't, because you won't tell me. You won't tell anyone, apparently. Charlotte refused to back down. But Isabella's going to grow up eventually and she's going to ask questions. What are you going to tell her? That her mother was a woman you don't talk about. That she's a ghost you keep locked away like the rest of your secrets. Diego turned and walked out without another word, leaving Charlotte standing in the nursery with a sweet potato-covered baby, and the distinct feeling that she'd just crossed a line she couldn't uncross. Rosa appeared in the doorway minutes later, her expression unreadable. Mr. Sebastian wants to see you in his office. I'll watch Bella. Charlotte's stomach dropped. Is he firing me? Mija, if Mr. Sebastian wanted to fire you, Vincent would be packing your bags already. When the boss wants to see someone in his office, it means something else entirely. What? Rosa smiled mysteriously. I guess you'll find out. Diego's office was on the second floor, down a hallway lined with paintings that were probably worth more than Charlotte's college education. 2 guards stood outside the door, and they nodded at Charlotte as she approached, which she took as a good sign. Surely they wouldn't nod at someone about to be executed. She knocked, heard a gruff come in, and entered what could only be described as a den of masculine power. Dark wood, leather furniture, a desk that looked like it had witnessed countless deals, both legal and very illegal. And behind that desk, Diego Sebastian, looking every inch the Mafia boss her grandmother had warned her about. Sit, he said, not looking up from whatever document he was reading. Charlotte sat in one of the leather chairs facing the desk, her hands folded in her lap to keep them from shaking. The silence stretched. Diego continued reading or pretending to read, his pen making occasional marks on the paper. Charlotte counted the seconds, reached 60, and decided she was done being intimidated. Did you call me here to watch you work, or was there a purpose? Diego's eyes snapped up, and for a moment Charlotte thought she'd miscalculated badly. Then, to her surprise, he laughed. It was a short, sharp sound, but genuine. You really aren't afraid of me, are you? I'm terrified of you, Charlotte admitted. I'm just more stubborn than I am scared. He set down his pen and leaned back in his chair, studying her with those dark, unreadable eyes. Her name was Vanessa. Charlotte blinked. Isabella's mother. Vanessa Rossi. We met at a charity gala, ironic, considering neither of us were particularly charitable people. She was smart, beautiful, and completely wrong for me. Diego's voice was carefully neutral, but Charlotte could hear the grief underneath. I knew it, she knew it. We did it anyway. What happened? What always happens when you mix the legitimate world with mine. She got pregnant and suddenly the stakes changed. I wanted her to leave Chicago, go somewhere safe until the baby came. She refused, said she wouldn't be hidden away like a dirty secret. Diego's hands tightened on the armrests. We argued about it the night before she went into labor. I said things, harsh things, the kind you can't take back. Charlotte stayed quiet, sensing he needed to get this out. The birth was complicated. They had to choose between saving her or saving Isabella. Vanessa, his voice cracked slightly. She chose Isabella before they even asked, made them promise. By the time I got to the hospital, Vanessa was gone and I had a daughter I had no idea how to take care of. I'm sorry, Charlotte said softly. Don't be, I don't want your pity. Diego stood, moving to the window. That overlooked the gardens. I brought you here because you need to understand something. You're right. I am afraid of Isabella. I'm afraid I'll fail her the way I failed her mother. I'm afraid I'll pass on too much of me and not enough of Vanessa. I'm afraid that just by being my daughter, she's already doomed. He turned back to Charlotte. But more than that, I'm afraid that if I let myself love her the way a father should, if I stop keeping that distance, then when something happens to her, and in my world something always happens, it will destroy me completely. Charlotte stood, moving closer to the desk. So instead, you're letting the fear destroy you slowly. Is that better? It's safer. For who? Not for Isabella. She needs a father who's present, not a ghost who pays the bills. I keep her safe. Safety isn't enough. Charlotte's voice rose despite herself. She needs love, connection, presence. She needs you to hold her even when your hands shake, to read her stories. Even when you're exhausted, to be there for scraped knees and bad dreams and first words. She needs a father, Diego, not a bank account with a security detail. Diego's expression shifted through several emotions too quickly for Charlotte to track. Then, quietly, what if I'm no good at it? Then you'll mess up. All parents mess up. The difference is whether you're there to try to fix it or whether you're hiding in your office avoiding the whole thing. Another long silence. Then Diego moved back to his desk and pressed a button on his phone. Vincent, have my schedule cleared for tomorrow morning. I'm not available until noon. Very good, sir. Vincent's voice crackled through the speaker. Diego looked at Charlotte. Tomorrow morning, you're going to teach me how to be a father, how to hold her properly, feed her, play with her, all of it. You want me to teach you how to parent your own daughter. Unless you have a better idea, that seems to be what you've been insisting I need to learn. He raised an eyebrow, or was all that just talk? Charlotte felt a smile tug at her lips despite herself. Tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. nursery. Wear clothes you don't mind getting destroyed by sweet potato. I look forward to it, Diego said dryly. As Charlotte turned to leave, Diego's voice stopped her. Charlotte, thank you for not letting me hide. She looked back at him, this dangerous man who was also a grieving father, and saw the vulnerability he usually kept buried under layers of power and control. That's what I'm here for, she said. The baby needs a mom, but she also needs her dad to stop being scared of loving her. That night, as Charlotte put Isabella to bed, She sang the lullabies her grandmother used to sing, the old songs passed down through generations. Isabella's eyes drooped, her tiny hand wrapped around Charlotte's finger, holding on like Charlotte was the anchor in her storm. Through the crack in the door, Charlotte saw a shadow, Diego, standing in the hallway, listening. She pretended not to notice, just kept singing until Isabella was deeply asleep. When she finally emerged from the nursery, the hallway was empty. But on the small table by the door, someone had left a single rose in a vase and a note in angular handwriting. Vanessa used to sing that song. Charlotte picked up the note, feeling the weight of what she'd taken on. Not just caring for a baby, but helping a broken family learn to heal. It was more than she'd signed up for. It was also, she suspected, exactly what she'd been looking for. In the morning, she'd teach a Mafia boss how to be a father. But tonight, she'd sleep knowing that maybe, just maybe, she was making a difference. Even if that difference was covered in sweet potato and operated on a schedule that made no sense to anyone over the age of 2. Chapter 4. Diego Sebastian arrived in the nursery at exactly 8 a.m. wearing jeans, actual jeans, and a t-shirt that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, but was still the most casual Charlotte had ever seen him. He looked uncomfortable, like a shark forced to swim in a kiddie pool. Isabella was in her high chair, banging a spoon against the tray with the rhythmic enthusiasm of a tiny, very untalented drummer. She looked up when Diego entered and immediately held out her arms, shouting "Dada" with absolute conviction. Diego froze like he'd been shot. Did she just say "Dada"? Charlotte smiled. She's been practicing all week. I figured you'd want to hear it directly rather than through a report from Rosa. Diego's expression cycled through shock, terror, and something that might have been joy before settling on carefully controlled neutrality. I thought first words came later. Some babies are early talkers. Isabella apparently decided you needed the extra motivation. Charlotte gestured to the chair beside the high chair. Come on, breakfast time. Her favorite meal to turn into abstract art. Diego sat stiffly, maintaining the kind of posture usually reserved for hostile negotiations. Isabella immediately grabbed for his hand, leaving sticky fingerprints on his expensive watch. She's very tactile, Diego observed. She's a baby, everything is tactile. Charlotte handed him a small bowl of oatmeal and a spoon. Okay, lesson 1, feeding. The goal is to get more food in her than on her, though honestly, that's aspirational at best. Diego looked at the bowl like it contained explosives. I've fed her before. With a bottle, sure. But solid foods are different. You have to read her cues, go at her pace, and accept that no matter how careful you are, you're both ending up covered in oatmeal. Dada, Isabella shouted again, banging her spoon with renewed vigor. Diego scooped a small amount of oatmeal and held it toward Isabella's mouth with the precision of a surgeon. Isabella stared at the spoon, at Diego, then deliberately turned her head away. She's rejecting it, Diego said. She's testing you. Try again, but this time make it fun. Airplane noises, silly faces, whatever works. I don't do silly faces. Charlotte raised an eyebrow. Then you're about to learn. What followed was possibly the most awkward feeding session in the history of parenting. Diego made sounds that could generously be called airplane adjacent, his expression remaining stoic even as he made vroom vroom noises that sounded like a car with engine trouble. Isabella found this hilarious, laughing so hard she nearly fell out of her high chair, which at least got her to open her mouth long enough for Diego to successfully deliver several spoonfuls. "There," Diego said with grim satisfaction, "food delivered." "And all over your shirt, her face, the wall behind her, and somehow the ceiling," Charlotte observed. "But yes, technically successful, ready for round two." By the end of breakfast, Diego looked like he'd survived combat. There was oatmeal in his hair. Charlotte had no idea how it got there. His shirt was beyond saving, and he had the shell-shocked expression of someone who'd vastly underestimated their opponent. Isabella, meanwhile, was radiant with joy, sticky hands reaching for her father's face. "Bath time," Charlotte announced, "which is actually the fun part." That was not the fun part. That was the warm-up. The estate's nursery bathroom had a tub specifically designed for babies, with a gentle slope and non-slip surface. Charlotte filled it with warm water, adding bubbles that Isabella immediately tried to eat. "Okay," Charlotte said, unbuttoning Isabella's onesie. "You're going to support her head and back. Keep one hand on her at all times and never look away. Babies can drown in 2 inches of water in under a minute." Diego's face went pale. "Maybe you should." "Nope, you need to learn this." Charlotte finished undressing Isabella and gently lowered her into the water. "See, hand here supporting her back. Other hand free for washing. She loves when you pour water over her belly. Watch." Charlotte demonstrated, and Isabella shrieked with delight, slapping the water and sending bubbles flying. "Your turn," Charlotte said, stepping back. Diego knelt beside the tub with the same intensity he probably brought to business negotiations. His hands were gentle despite their size, supporting Isabella with care that belied his obvious nervousness. When he poured water over her belly, she laughed and splashed, soaking his shirt even more thoroughly. "Da-da," she announced, as if informing him of an important fact he might have forgotten. "Yes," Diego said softly, "da-da." Charlotte felt something shift in her chest, watching this dangerous man transform into a gentle father. It was like witnessing a miracle in slow motion. The way his shoulders relaxed, the way his eyes softened, the way he started talking to Isabella in a low, gentle voice about nothing and everything. "You're doing great," Charlotte said quietly. Diego looked up at her, water dripping from his hair where Isabella had enthusiastically splashed him. "I don't know what I'm doing." "Nobody does, but you're here, you're trying, and she loves you. That's all that matters." After the bath, Charlotte showed Diego how to dress a squirming toddler, an Olympic sport if ever there was one, how to brush the few wisps of hair Isabella had, and how to apply the diaper cream that prevented rashes. "There's a lot of logistics," Diego observed, wrestling with a onesie that had apparently been designed by someone who'd never actually seen a baby. Welcome to parenting. It's 10% precious moments and 90% wondering how something so small can produce so much laundry. By noon, Diego looked exhausted but oddly content. Isabella had fallen asleep against his chest during story time, one tiny fist curled in his shirt, her breathing soft and even. "Don't move," Charlotte whispered. "This is the magic moment when they fall asleep on you, and you realize you'd fight an army to keep them safe." Diego looked down at his sleeping daughter, his expression unguarded in a way Charlotte had never seen. "I would," he said quietly. "Fight an army, I mean. I'd burn the world down if it meant keeping her safe." "I know you would, but right now she just needs you to hold her." They sat in silence for a long moment, the only sound Isabella's soft breathing and the distant noise of the estate beyond the nursery walls. "Thank you," Diego said finally, "for this, for making me do this." "You're welcome, same time tomorrow." "Actually," Diego shifted carefully, trying not to wake Isabella, "I was thinking we could make this a regular thing. Every morning unless there's an emergency. I want to be present for her." Charlotte felt warmth spread through her chest. "I think that's a great idea." "And Charlotte," Diego met her eyes, "I want you to tell me about you, your family, your background, why you were working at Bella, not with a sociology degree. I realized I know nothing about the woman I've trusted with the most important person in my life." Charlotte hesitated. Her story wasn't dramatic or interesting, just another tale of dreams deferred and bills to pay. But something in Diego's expression said he genuinely wanted to know. "My grandmother raised me," Charlotte began. "South side of Chicago, in an apartment that had more character than square footage. She cleaned houses for a living, worked herself to exhaustion to make sure I could go to college. I was going to be a social worker, help families like ours." "What happened?" "Grandmother got sick my senior year, cancer. The medical bills ate through her savings, then mine, then anything we could borrow. I graduated but couldn't afford to take an unpaid internship for certification. Needed money immediately." Charlotte shrugged. "Bella not paid better than most places, and the night shifts meant I could visit her during the day. She died 6 months ago." "I'm sorry." "Me too. She would have loved Isabella. Grandmother always said babies were proof God still believed in fresh starts." Diego was quiet for a moment then. "My father built this empire on blood and fear. He taught me that love was weakness, that caring about anyone gave your enemies leverage. Then he died in a restaurant, shot by someone he'd trusted for 20 years, and I inherited a kingdom built on paranoia." "Is that why you kept Isabella at arm's length? Because your father taught you not to care?" "My father taught me that everyone you love becomes a weapon someone can use against you. He wasn't wrong. Look at what happened to Vanessa. She died because of me, because of what I am." Charlotte shifted closer, her voice firm. "Vanessa died because of a medical complication, not because of you. And yes, Isabella is at risk because of who her father is, but she's at greater risk if her father is emotionally absent. Children need love." more than they need security systems. Can't they have both? They can, they should, but one without the other is just. Charlotte searched for the right words, existing, not living. Isabella stirred, making small, sleepy sounds. Diego automatically adjusted his hold, his movements becoming more natural, more confident. I want her to have both, he said. Love and safety, which means I need to be better at the love part. You're already getting better. 3 days ago, you barely touched her. Now you're her favorite nap spot. Diego smiled, a real smile that transformed his face. She has terrible taste in nap spots. I'm extremely uncomfortable. Welcome to parenthood. Comfort is for people without children. The moment was interrupted by Marco appearing in the doorway, his expression urgent. Boss, we have a situation. The Volkov family just moved on our northern territory. 3 of our warehouses hit simultaneously. Diego's face went cold, the father disappearing. Behind the boss in seconds, casualties. 2 injured, none dead, but they're making a statement. Diego looked down at Isabella, still sleeping peacefully against his chest, then at Charlotte. Something like regret flashed across his face. I have to. I know, go, I've got her. Diego carefully transferred Isabella to Charlotte, and Charlotte felt the weight of trust in that simple action. This man, who trusted no one, was trusting her with everything that mattered. Lock the nursery, Diego said, his voice all business now. Standard security protocols. Don't open the door for anyone except Vincent or Rosa. Diego. This is what I meant about my world. The Volkovs are testing our defenses. They want to know if we're weak. His eyes hardened. I need to show them we're not. He was gone before Charlotte could respond, Marco closing the door behind them. Through the wood, Charlotte could hear rapid Italian footsteps, the sound of an empire mobilizing for war. As she looked down at Isabella, still sleeping innocently, unaware that her father had just left to do things Charlotte probably didn't want to know about. Your dad's complicated, Charlotte whispered to the sleeping baby. But he loves you. That's got to count for something. The afternoon passed slowly. Rosa brought lunch, her face carefully neutral but her movements quick and efficient. Vincent checked on them twice, his usually calm demeanor slightly strained. The security outside the nursery doubled, then tripled. Charlotte tried to keep things normal for Isabella. Playtime, songs, books. But she felt the tension crackling through the estate like electricity before a storm. At 6 p.m., the nursery door opened and Diego appeared, looking like he'd aged 5 years in 6 hours. His shirt was different, Charlotte noticed. The one from the morning, the one with oatmeal in the hair and bath water stains, was gone, replaced by something dark and pristine. She didn't ask about the change. Some questions were better left unspoken. Is she okay? Diego asked immediately. She's fine. We've been playing, had lunch, took a nap. Normal day, all things considered. Diego crossed the room and lifted Isabella from her playpen, holding her close with an intensity that spoke of someone who just remembered what he had to lose. Isabella grabbed his face with both hands. apparently unbothered by his tense expression. "Dada," she said happily. Diego closed his eyes, breathing deeply. When he opened them again, he looked at Charlotte. "The Volkovs are sending a message. They think because Isabella's mother died, because I have a weakness now, that I've gone soft. What are you going to do?" "What I always do. Remind them why crossing the Sebastian family is a death sentence." His voice was cold, matter-of-fact. "But that means things are going to get worse before they get better. Security will be tighter, restrictions stricter. I need to know you're prepared for that." Charlotte thought about her grandmother's warnings, about staying safe and minding her own business. She thought about the world she'd stepped into, the danger that now surrounded her by proximity. Then she looked at Isabella, babbling happily in her father's arms, and made her choice. "I'm prepared," Charlotte said, "whatever it takes to keep her safe." Diego studied her face, searching for doubt. "You should be scared." "I am scared. I'm also committed. There's a difference." Something shifted in Diego's expression. Respect, maybe, or recognition. "Tomorrow morning, Marco starts your weapons training. And Charlotte, I'm sorry you got pulled into this. I walked into it with my eyes open. Nobody forced me. Still, this wasn't what you signed up for." Charlotte smiled slightly. "A crying baby in a restaurant wasn't what I signed up for either, but here we are." That night, after Isabella was asleep and the estate had settled into uneasy quiet, Charlotte stood at her window watching. Security patrols circle the grounds like sharks. She thought about her old life, simple, safe, predictable. She didn't miss it. Somewhere in this dangerous house, a mafia boss was planning violence to protect his daughter. Somewhere beyond these walls, enemies were circling, looking for weaknesses to exploit. And somewhere in between, Charlotte Emerson had become the bridge between a broken father and his innocent child. It was terrifying. It was complicated. It was also, Charlotte realized, exactly where she was supposed to be. Even if that meant learning to shoot a gun tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. "Grandmother," Charlotte whispered to the night, "I hope you're not watching this part." Chapter 5. The private shooting range was tucked away on the southern edge of the estate, hidden behind a grove of trees that probably cost more to landscape than Charlotte's student loans. At 7 a.m., the air was crisp and quiet, broken only by bird songs and the sound of Marco loading ammunition into various firearms with the casual efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Charlotte stood at the firing line wearing protective eyewear and ear protection, staring at the gun in her hands like it might spontaneously explode. "It's not going to bite you," Marco said, his voice slightly muffled through the ear protection. "It might shoot me if I do this wrong." "Not if you follow instructions. Safety on, finger off the trigger until you're ready to fire. Always assume it's loaded. Never point it at anything you don't intend to destroy." Marco moved behind her, adjusting her stance. Feet shoulder-width apart, slight bend in the knees. You want to be stable but not rigid. Charlotte tried to focus on the target downrange. A simple paper silhouette that looked disturbingly human-shaped. But her mind kept wandering to Isabella, still asleep in the nursery with Rosa watching over her. "You're thinking about the baby," Marco observed. "How did you?" "Because everyone thinks about what they're protecting when they learn this. Makes it easier to pull the trigger when you remember why you're doing it." Marco stepped back. "Now align the sights, breathe steadily and squeeze. Don't pull the trigger." Charlotte did as instructed. The gun kicked in her hands, the sound explosive even through the ear protection. The shot went wide, missing the target entirely and hitting the dirt backstop. "Again," Marco said patiently. They spent the next hour drilling, stance, aim, breath control, trigger discipline. Charlotte's arms ached, her ears rang despite the protection, and she was fairly certain she'd never hit the actual target, just the general vicinity of where a target might theoretically exist. "You're improving," Marco said, which Charlotte suspected was generous. "I'm terrible at this." "You're learning, there's a difference." Marco unloaded the weapon and set it aside. "Most people never fire a gun in their lives. The fact that you're willing to learn means you take Isabella's safety seriously." "Of course I do. Charlotte paused, surprised by the fierceness in her own voice. "She's everything." Marco's scarred face softened slightly. "Boss chose well with you. The others, they saw Isabella as a job. You see her as a child who needs protecting." They walked back toward the main house, the morning sun now fully risen and painting the estate in golden light. It would have been beautiful if Charlotte could forget about the armed guards stationed every 50 yards, the cameras tracking their movement, the fact that she'd just spent an hour learning to kill someone. Vincent met them at the door, his expression carefully controlled in that way that meant something was wrong. "Miss Emerson, Mr. Sebastian requests your presence in his office immediately. Rosa has Isabella." Charlotte's stomach dropped. "Is something wrong? Is Isabella?" "The child is fine, but there's been a development." Diego's office felt different this morning, more crowded, more tense. Marco followed Charlotte in, taking a position by the door with the casual vigilance of a trained guard. Diego sat behind his desk, his expression carved from granite, while two other men Charlotte didn't recognize stood near the window. "Charlotte," Diego said, his voice all business. "This is Antonio and Luca, my security consultants. There's been a complication." One of the men, Antonio, tall and lean with cold eyes, turned toward her. "Miss Emerson, we need to ask you some questions about your background. Standard security protocol given recent events." "What kind of questions?" "Your family, friends, former employers, anyone who might have leverage over you." Antonio pulled out a tablet. "The Volkov family is looking for weaknesses. Anyone close to Isabella becomes a potential target or asset." Charlotte felt heat rise in her chest. "You think I'm a security risk?" "We think everyone is a potential security risk until proven." "Otherwise," Lucas said, his voice flat and professional, "it's not personal." "It feels pretty personal." Diego leaned forward. "Charlotte, I need you to cooperate with them. They're just doing their job." "By interrogating me, I thought." Charlotte stopped, unsure what she'd thought. That she was trusted, That 3 weeks of caring for Isabella had earned her more than suspicion. You thought what? Diego's eyes were hard, unreadable. That you were family. You're an employee. A valuable one, but still subject to security protocols like everyone else. The words landed like a slap. Charlotte felt something crack inside her chest, not quite breaking, but definitely fracturing. "Fine," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "Ask your questions." The interrogation, because that's what it was despite their polite corporate language, took 2 hours. They asked about her grandmother, her mother who'd moved to Atlanta 5 years ago, her best friend Keisha, former boyfriend's college roommates, anyone she'd ever mentioned money problems to, anyone who knew she worked for the Sebastian family. Charlotte answered everything honestly, watching Diego's face remain impassive throughout. When they asked about her student loans, about the medical debt from her grandmother's illness, she saw something flicker in his expression but couldn't read it. "That's substantial debt," Antonio noted. "Makes you vulnerable to financial pressure." "I'm managing it." "Are you?" "Because our research shows you're 3 months behind on payments." Charlotte's face burned. "That's none of your business." "It became our business when you became responsible for Sebastian's daughter," Luca said coldly. "Debt makes you controllable. The Volkovs could offer to clear it in exchange for information." "I would never." "Everyone has a price, Miss Emerson. The question is whether you know yours yet." "That's enough," Diego said quietly, but with authority that shut down the conversation. Immediately, "Charlotte, you're dismissed. Rosa needs help with Isabella's lunch." Charlotte stood on shaking legs, feeling humiliated and angry and confused all at once. She'd thought foolishly, apparently, that she mattered here, that she was more than just another employee to be vetted and suspected. At the door, she turned back. "For what it's worth, my price isn't money. It never has been." Diego's expression didn't change. "Everyone says that, right up until the offer gets high enough." Charlotte left before she could say something she'd regret, her vision blurring with tears she refused to shed until she was safely back in her room. Rosa found her 20 minutes later, sitting on her bed and staring at nothing. "Mija," Rosa said softly, sitting beside her, "don't take it personally. Mr. Sebastian has to be careful. He treated me like a suspect, like someone who'd sell out a baby for money. He's scared. The Volkovs sent a message this morning, a photo of Isabella at the window, taken from outside the estate with a rifle scope. They wanted to prove they could reach her whenever they wanted." Charlotte's blood went cold. "What?" "Security found the position where the photo was taken. Whoever it was got past the outer perimeter, spent time watching the house, and left without being detected." Rosa's face was grim. "Mr. Sebastian is terrified even if he won't show it. So he's tightening control over everything he can, including you. By accusing me of being corruptible. By making sure you understand the stakes. That photo wasn't just a threat, it was a promise. They're coming for Isabella, Charlotte, and everyone around her needs to be beyond suspicion." Charlotte thought about the image, someone watching Isabella through a rifle scope, reducing her to a target. The casual evil of it made her sick. "I need to see her," Charlotte said, standing abruptly. "She's napping. I need to see her now." Isabella was indeed asleep, curled in her crib, with her favorite stuffed rabbit clutched to her chest. Charlotte stood over the crib, watching the gentle rise and fall of her breathing, and felt something fierce and protective surge through her. "Nobody touches you," Charlotte whispered. "I don't care what I have to do. Nobody touches you." Behind her, the door opened. Diego stood in the doorway, his expression less controlled than it had been in the office. He looked exhausted, haunted even. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "For what? Treating me like a criminal, or for making me feel like an idiot for thinking I mattered here?" Diego flinched. "Both. Neither. I don't." He ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident. "They sent a photo, Charlotte. Someone had Isabella in their crosshairs. Do you understand what that did to me? What it's still doing to me? So you took it out on me." "I took it out on everyone. Marco's been reassigned. Half the security team is fired, and I just spent an hour screaming at people who've worked for me for years." Diego moved closer, his voice raw. "I'm losing control, and I don't know how to get it back." Charlotte wanted to stay angry, to maintain her righteous indignation. But looking at Diego, really looking, she saw a man drowning in fear, lashing out because he didn't know what else to do. "You can't control everything," Charlotte said softly. "No matter how many security protocols you implement or how many people you interrogate, sometimes bad things happen anyway. Then what am I supposed to do? Trust the people you've chosen to protect her. Trust that we're all here because we care about Isabella, not because we're looking for a payday." Charlotte moved closer to him. "Trust me." Diego's eyes searched her face. "What if I trust you and I'm wrong? What if that trust is what gets her killed? What if you don't trust anyone, and that isolation is what destroys you both?" The silence stretched between them, heavy with everything unsaid. Isabella stirred in. Her crib, making small sleepy sounds that made them both instinctively check on her. "She's okay," Charlotte murmured. "She's safe. For now, but the Volkovs aren't going to stop. They smell weakness, and they're going to keep pressing until," Diego's voice caught, "until I give them what they want or until they take what I can't bear to lose." Charlotte made a decision. She reached out and took Diego's hand, feeling him tense at the contact before slowly relaxing. "Then we make sure they never get the chance. But Diego, you can't do this alone. You need to let people help you let people in, even if it's terrifying." Diego looked at their joined hands like he was trying to solve a complex equation. "I'm not good at this. Trusting, relying on others. My father beat that instinct out of me young. Your father isn't here. You are. And you get to decide what kind of father you want to be to Isabella. I want to be the kind who keeps her alive. Then be the kind who also teaches her love isn't weakness. That trusting people isn't stupidity. That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit you need help." Diego pulled his hand away, but gently. "The debt from your grandmother, it's cleared. I had Antonio take care of it this morning." Charlotte's breath caught. You what? No, I can't accept that. It's done. Consider it a bonus for putting up with my paranoia and terrible management style. Diego managed a slight smile, and maybe an apology for the interrogation. Diego, that's too much. It's nothing compared to what you've given Isabella. Given me. He paused. I meant what I said in the office. You are just an employee. But Charlotte, you're also the only person in this house Isabella reaches for when she's scared. You're the person who made me remember I'm supposed to be her father, not just her warden. So maybe you're a little bit more than just an employee. Charlotte felt tears prick her eyes, the emotional whiplash of the morning. Finally catching up to her. You're terrible at apologies, you know that. I've been told, usually right before people quit. I'm not quitting. Good, because Isabella would never forgive me, and honestly, neither would I. The moment was interrupted by Marco bursting through the door, his expression urgent. Boss, we've got multiple vehicles approaching the front gate. Volkov colors. They're here for a meeting. Diego's face went cold and hard. I didn't authorize any meeting. They're saying they have a proposal, one you'll want to hear before you refuse it. Diego looked at Charlotte, then at Isabella sleeping peacefully in her crib. Get her to the safe room. Now, don't come out until I personally give the all clear. Diego. Now Charlotte. Charlotte scooped Isabella from the crib, the baby waking with a confused whimper, and ran. Rosa appeared from nowhere, guiding them through the hidden door behind the bookshelf and into the reinforced safe room that Charlotte had hoped they'd never actually need to use. The door sealed with a heavy thunk, and suddenly they were in a space that felt more like a bunker than a room. Monitors showed various angles of the estate, and Charlotte watched as 6 black SUVs pulled up to the main entrance. Men emerged, dangerous men with the kind of faces that advertised violence as a career choice. And in the center, a man in an expensive suit who carried himself with the authority of someone used to getting his way. Viktor Volkov, Rosa breathed, her face pale. He never comes himself, never. This is bad. On the monitor, Charlotte watched Diego emerge from the house, flanked by Marco and a dozen armed guards. The two groups faced each other across the driveway like armies before battle. Viktor Volkov smiled, and even through the grainy security footage, Charlotte could see it was the smile of a predator. Then he said something that made Diego go absolutely still. The monitors had no audio, but Charlotte could read body language. Whatever Victor had said, it wasn't a proposal. It was a threat. And based on Diego's expression, it was one he couldn't afford to ignore. What would you do if someone threatened the child you loved? Fight back at any cost, or find a way to negotiate peace? Drop your thoughts below. Chapter 6. The safe room's monitors showed everything in crystal clarity, except the one thing Charlotte desperately needed: sound. She watched Diego's jaw clench, watched Viktor Volkov gesture casually like they were discussing the weather instead of whatever threat had just been delivered, watched the armed men on both sides tense like springs ready to explode. Isabella whimpered in Charlotte's arms, sensing the tension. Charlotte automatically began swaying, humming softly, but her eyes never left the screens. "What's happening?" Charlotte asked Rosa. Rosa's face was grave, her eyes fixed on the monitor showing Diego. "Nothing good. Victor doesn't make house calls unless he's already won." "Won what?" "Whatever game they've been playing." On screen, Victor pulled out his phone, showed Diego something. Diego's entire body went rigid, his hand moving toward his jacket before Marco caught his wrist, stopping him. Whatever was on that phone had rattled Diego Sebastian in a way Charlotte had never seen. Victor laughed. Charlotte could see his shoulders shake with it, and said something else. Then, casually, he turned and walked back to his SUV. His men followed, and within moments the convoy was driving away, leaving Diego standing in the driveway like a statue. "That's it," Charlotte said. "They just left." "That's worse," Rosa whispered. "Much worse. It means they got what they came for." Marco's voice crackled through the intercom. "All clear, but stay put. Boss is on his way to you." 5 minutes later, the safe room door opened and Diego stepped through. He looked like he'd aged a decade in the span of a conversation. His face was pale, his hands shaking slightly before he clenched them into fists. "What did he say?" Charlotte demanded. Diego looked at Isabella, something like anguish crossing his features. "Rosa, take Bella to the nursery. I need to speak with Charlotte alone." "Boss, now." Rosa took Isabella gently from Charlotte's arms, the baby immediately reaching back for Charlotte with a cry of protest. "I know, Pequeña," Rosa murmured. "I know." Once they were alone, Diego sank into one of the safe room's chairs like his strings had been cut. Charlotte had never seen him look defeated before. It was terrifying. "Diego, what's going on?" "Victor knows about you." The words came out flat, emotionless. "Not just that you're Isabella's nanny. He knows everything. Your mother in Atlanta, your friend Keisha, the coffee shop you went to every morning before you worked here. He's been having you followed since the night at Bella Knot." Charlotte's blood went cold. "Why?" "Because he's smarter than I gave him credit for." Diego's laugh was bitter. "I thought I was protecting Isabella by keeping her isolated, by vetting everyone around her. But I missed the obvious vulnerability. You weren't part of my world. You had a whole life before this, connections I couldn't control, places you used to go, patterns you used to follow." "Used to?" "Victor's men have been tracking you for 3 weeks. They know your routine at the estate, know when you take Isabella to the gardens, know which room you sleep in." Diego pulled out his phone, his hand shaking as he showed her a photo. Charlotte's stomach dropped. It was her from yesterday, walking with Isabella in the gardens. The angle suggested it had been taken from outside the estate walls, through the trees, with a telephoto lens. Diego swiped. Another photo, Charlotte in her room, visible through the window. Another, Charlotte and Isabella at breakfast. "He has dozens of these," Diego said, his voice hollow. "Weeks' worth. He's been building profile, waiting for the right moment." "The right moment for what?" Diego met her eyes, and what she saw there made her breath catch. "He wants to make a trade, you for territorial concessions." The words didn't make sense at first. Charlotte's brain refused to process them. What? He's going to take you. Not Isabella. He was never after Isabella. That was misdirection, getting me focused on protecting her while he circled you. Diego stood, pacing like a caged animal. He knows you're not just the nanny. He knows Isabella bonds with you, knows that he stopped, jaw working. He knows taking you would hurt me without starting an all-out war. Kidnapping my daughter would mean every family in Chicago coming down on him. But taking the hired help, that's just business. Charlotte's legs felt weak. She sat down hard on the chair Diego had vacated. When? He didn't say. That's the game, keep me paranoid, keep me waiting, keep me wondering when the axe will fall. Meanwhile, he wants me to give up 3 of my territories as insurance, protection, money to keep his men away from you. And if you refuse? Diego's expression went dark. Then he takes you anyway and makes an example. Victor's message was clear. He's already won. The only question is whether I cooperate or make it harder on everyone. Charlotte's mind raced, trying to process the impossible situation. She'd known there was danger, but somehow being the actual target felt surreal. What are you going to do? Give him the territories. It's just business, just money. It's not worth, Diego's voice cracked. It's not worth your life. No, Charlotte stood, surprised by the firmness in her own voice. You can't do that. Charlotte, if you give in to him now, it never stops. He'll keep demanding more, keep taking more until there's nothing left. I've read about men like Viktor Volkov. They're sharks. They smell blood and they keep coming. Then what do you suggest? Because I'm not letting him take you. The words hung in the air between them, vibrating with intensity that went beyond employer and employee, beyond protector and protected. You're not letting him take me, Charlotte said slowly, an idea forming. What if I go willingly? Diego stared at her like she'd lost her mind. Absolutely not. Hear me out. Victor wants leverage over you, right? He thinks taking me against my will gives him power. But what if I volunteer? What if I walk into his organization as a spy or something? That's the worst idea I've ever heard. And I once watched a man try to negotiate with a rival family using interpretive dance. Despite everything, Charlotte almost smiled. I'm serious. He's been watching me, but he doesn't know me. He thinks I'm just some naive girl you hired. What if we use that? I go to him, pretend to be scared and cooperative, and feed you information from the inside. Viktor Volkov would see through that in seconds. He didn't build his empire by being stupid. But he did build it by being arrogant. Men like him always underestimate women, especially black women. He'll think I'm desperate, easy to manipulate. We can use that. Diego shook his head vehemently. No, I won't risk you like that. You don't have a choice. Either he takes me by force or I go strategically. At least this way we have some control. The answer is no. Charlotte stepped closer, forcing Diego to look at her. What's your alternative? Hide me forever. Give in to every demand. Watch your empire crumble piece by piece because you're afraid to make the hard call. I'm afraid to get you killed. Diego's control finally snapped. Damn it, Charlotte, you're not some chess piece I can sacrifice for strategic advantage. You're— He stopped, breathing hard. I'm what? The silence stretched. On the monitors, Charlotte could see Isabella with Rosa in the nursery, playing with blocks, innocent and unaware of the adult chaos swirling around her. You're important, Diego said finally, to Isabella, to this house. He stopped again, jaw clenched. Charlotte felt her heart pound. To you. Diego looked away, the admission apparently too difficult to make while looking at her. Yes, to me, which is exactly why I can't let you do this. And what happens when Victor gets tired of waiting? When he decides to take me from the grocery store or a doctor's appointment, or just storms the house with enough men to make it happen anyway? Charlotte's voice was urgent. At least my plan gives us a chance. It's too dangerous. Everything is dangerous. Staying here is dangerous. Leaving is dangerous. The only difference is whether we're reactive or proactive. Charlotte grabbed Diego's arm, making him face her. I'm not a damsel waiting to be rescued. Let me help. Let me fight. Diego searched her face, and Charlotte saw the war happening behind his eyes. Fear versus strategy, emotion versus logic, the father in him versus the boss. If I agree to this, he said slowly, and that's a massive if you follow my rules exactly. Marco trains you, you memorize every protocol, and at the first sign of real danger, we extract you. No heroes, no improvisation. Agreed. I'm serious, Charlotte. Victor is not a man who shows mercy. If he even suspects you're working against him. I understand the risks. Diego studied her for another long moment. Then, reluctantly, we'd need to make it believable. Stage an argument, make it look like you're angry with me, vulnerable. Victor's people are still watching. They'd need to see you storm out, go somewhere predictable. My old apartment. I never officially gave it up. Too obvious. He'd expect a trap. Diego's mind was clearly working now, shifting into tactical mode. We'd need somewhere neutral, somewhere that makes sense but isn't so convenient it raises suspicion. Keisha's place. She lives across town. I used to stay there all the time. Diego pulled out his phone. Already texting. Marco will reach out to Keisha, brief her, make sure she understands the security protocols. If you're going to do this, we control every variable we can. When? Tonight. Victor's expecting me to stew for a few days, but that means his surveillance will be lighter. We catch him off guard, make him think you left on your own before I could stop you. The plan was forming, taking shape, becoming real. Charlotte felt fear spike through her but pushed it down. This was the right call, the only call. I need to see Isabella, Charlotte said, before we do this. Diego nodded. I'll come with you. They walked to the nursery together, neither speaking, both processing what they'd just decided. Isabella was building a tower of blocks with Rosa's help, her face scrunched in concentration. Char! Isabella shouted when she saw Charlotte, abandoning her blocks to toddle over with arms outstretched. Charlotte scooped her up, breathing in the baby powder scent of her, memorizing the weight of her in her arms. Hey, sweet girl, having fun with Rosa. Tower, Isabella announced, pointing at her architectural masterpiece. It's beautiful, you're so smart. Isabella beamed, then noticed Diego and immediately reached for him. Dada. Diego took her and Charlotte watched father and daughter together, her heart clenching. If this went wrong, if Victor wasn't fooled or if something happened. No, she couldn't think like that. We should practice, Charlotte said quietly. The argument, it needs to look real. Diego nodded, handing Isabella back to Rosa. Meet me in my office in 10 minutes. And Charlotte, I'm sorry in advance for what I'm about to say to you. It's acting, I understand. But 10 minutes later, standing in Diego's office with Marco and two other senior associates present as witnesses, Charlotte realized that understanding intellectually and experiencing emotionally were two very different things. You're fired, Diego said. Coldly, his entire demeanor transformed into the Mafia boss Charlotte had first encountered at Bella Not. Pack your things and be gone within the hour. What? Why? Charlotte's own anger wasn't entirely acting. They'd agreed on this, but the dismissal still stung. Because you've overstepped your bounds repeatedly, questioned my authority, and made decisions regarding my daughter without my approval. Diego's voice was ice. I don't need a nanny who thinks she knows better than I do. I was trying to help her, to help you. I don't want your help, I want you gone. The other men in the room shifted uncomfortably. This was clearly outside their usual business discussions. Charlotte let tears form, not hard, given the stress and fear. I gave up everything for this job, for Isabella, and you're just throwing me out. You were compensated generously. Consider your debt cancellation as severance. Diego turned away, the ultimate dismissal. Marco will escort you. Out. Charlotte looked at Marco, who managed to look both sympathetic and unmoved. This way, Miss Emerson. As they left the office, Charlotte heard Diego say something in Italian to the other men, his tone casual. They laughed. It was perfectly played, the dismissal of an employee who'd gotten too attached, too presumptuous. Charlotte hoped Victor's surveillance caught every moment. In her room, Charlotte packed quickly while Marco swept for bugs. He found 3, one in the smoke detector, one behind the mirror, one in a decorative vase. He's been listening to everything, Charlotte whispered, horrified. Which means he heard the fight, heard Diego fire you. It'll make your story more believable. Marco crushed the bugs efficiently. These are the only 3. We sweep daily, but he must have planted them recently, maybe bribed someone on the cleaning staff. Charlotte's phone, her real phone, not the secure one Diego had given her, buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I hear. You're looking for new employment. I pay better than Sebastian. Interested. Her blood went cold. Marco. He looked at the phone, his expression grim. That's the hook. He's moving faster than we expected. How do I respond? Tell him you want to meet somewhere public. Neutral ground. You're scared of Diego, but you're not stupid. Charlotte typed with shaking fingers. Who is this? The response came immediately. A friend. One who can protect you from Sebastian's reach. Coffee tomorrow, 10 a.m., Rosie's Diner on 5th. Come alone. Marco nodded approvingly. Perfect. Public place, daytime, lots of witnesses. He's playing it smart, making you feel safe. Should I agree? Yes, but we'll have people everywhere, customers, staff, the building across the street. You won't be alone for a second. Charlotte typed, "How do I know this isn't a trap?" You don't, but what's your alternative? Stay on the streets and wait for Sebastian to find you. I'm offering protection, money, and a chance to make him pay for how he treated you. All I ask is conversation. Charlotte showed Marco. He nodded. Send it. Tell him you'll be there. After Charlotte confirmed, Marco helped her finish packing. At the door, he paused. Boss is doing the right thing, keeping you safe. But Charlotte, he's also terrified. I've known Diego Sebastian for 8 years, and I've never seen him like this. Like what? Vulnerable. You got past his defenses somehow, made him remember he's human. Marco's scarred face was serious. Don't die on him. He wouldn't survive it. The car ride to Keisha's apartment was silent. Charlotte watched the estate disappear in the side mirror, wondering if she'd ever see it again, wondering if she'd ever hold Isabella again. Stop it, she told herself. This works. It has to work. Keisha's apartment was small but warm, filled with plants and personality. Keisha herself was waiting at the door, her expression caught between worry and disbelief. Girl, when Marco called me, I thought he was pranking me. But then he explained. Keisha pulled Charlotte into a fierce hug. You're actually doing this. You're walking into a lion's den on purpose. I don't have a choice. You always have a choice. You're choosing this. Charlotte pulled back. He was going to take me anyway. At least this way I'm in control. Or at least you think you are. Keisha led her inside. Marco said I'm supposed to act normal, like you just needed a place to crash after getting fired. And that under no circumstances am I to let you go to that meeting tomorrow. What? Plans change. Diego's voice came from Keisha's bedroom doorway, and Charlotte spun to find him standing there, still in the suit from earlier but looking somehow different. Less boss, more man. Victor moved faster than expected. He'll be watching this apartment, waiting for you to panic and run. So we're going to give him what he wants, but on our terms. I don't understand. Diego moved into the living room, and Charlotte noticed Marco behind him, plus 2 other guards positioned by the windows. The meeting tomorrow was supposed to be reconnaissance. You'd meet whoever Victor sent, feel out the situation, set the hook. But he's too eager, too confident. That makes him sloppy. So what are we doing instead? Diego's smile was sharp and dangerous. We're letting him take you tonight, and when he does, we follow him straight to wherever he's been hiding his operation. Charlotte's heart hammered. Tonight, but I thought. You thought you'd have time to prepare, time to think. That's exactly what Victor's counting on. You being nervous, unsure, easy to manipulate. Instead, we hit him while he's still congratulating himself on his clever recruitment text. How do you know he'll make a move tonight? Because he has men positioned outside this building right now. 3 different vehicles, rotating surveillance. He's waiting for the perfect moment when you're vulnerable, alone, scared. Diego's eyes met hers. We're going to give him that moment, but Charlotte, you won't actually be alone, not for a second. Marco pulled out a small device, no bigger than a button. Subcutaneous tracker. We inject it under your skin right here. He indicated a spot between Charlotte's shoulder blades. Untraceable unless you know exactly what to look for. We'll know where you are at all times. And the wires. Too risky. They'll search you, probably thoroughly. But the tracker is invisible on metal detectors, doesn't show on X-rays unless you're specifically looking for it, and has a battery life of 72 hours. 72 hours to find Victor's base and extract me. Less than that if possible, Diego said. Every hour you're with them is an hour something can go wrong. Charlotte nodded, trying to project confidence she didn't entirely feel. Okay, so what's the play? I go for a walk, get grabbed. You go for a run, Diego corrected. There's a park 2 blocks from here. You used to jog there in the mornings before you came to work for me. Your social media is full of photos from it. Victor's people will know that. It'll look natural, like you're trying to maintain normalcy despite being fired. And when they grab me, you fight just enough to make it believable, then you let them take you. Scream, make a scene, give our people time to track which direction they go. Diego's jaw tightened. But Charlotte, if at any point this feels wrong, if you get scared or if they do something unexpected, you say the word lighthouse. That's the abort code. We extract you immediately, consequences be damned. Lighthouse, Charlotte repeated. We'll have teams following, but at a distance. Victor can't know we're tracking him or this whole thing falls apart. Diego moved closer, his voice dropping. Are you sure about this? Once you're in motion, there's no safe way to pull you out until we have Victor's location. Charlotte thought about Isabella, about her char, and her tiny hands and her trust. She thought about Diego, trying so hard to protect everyone while being terrified of losing them. She thought about Viktor Volkov and his casual evil, reducing human beings to chess pieces. I'm sure, she said. 90 minutes later, Charlotte was jogging through Brookside Park in athletic clothes that had been part of her old life, trying to ignore the fact that somewhere in the darkness, multiple groups of armed men were watching her. The park was quiet at 9 p.m., just a few late evening walkers and couples. Charlotte kept her pace steady, her breath even, projecting the image of someone trying to clear their head after a terrible day. The attack came at the dark stretch between 2 streetlights, professional and terrifyingly quick. A van screeched to a stop, doors flying open. Hands grabbed her, strong, merciless, cutting off her scream with a cloth over her mouth. Charlotte fought. Remembered to fight, kicking and thrashing as they hauled her toward the van. Someone grunted as her elbow connected. Feisty, boss will like that. Then she was inside, the doors slamming shut and the van was accelerating. Through the small window, Charlotte caught a glimpse of people running toward them. Too late, too slow, exactly as planned. A bag went over her head, plunging her into darkness. Relax, sweetheart, a voice said, amused and cruel. We're just taking you somewhere safe, somewhere Mr. Sebastian can't reach you. Charlotte's last thought before the chloroform cloth pressed against her face again was that she hoped Diego's tracker was working. Then nothing. Chapter 7. Charlotte woke to the smell of expensive cologne and old money, leather, cigar smoke, and something sharper underneath. Her head pounded, her mouth tasted like chemicals, and for a disorienting moment she couldn't remember where she was or why. Then it came flooding back. The park, the van, the chloroform. She was sitting in a chair, not restrained but positioned in a way that suggested restraints weren't necessary. The room was elegant, high ceilings, crown molding, art that was probably worth more than her student loans had been. A gentleman's study, if that gentleman happened to traffic in human misery. Across from her, behind a desk that could have doubled as a boat, sat Viktor Volkov. He was watching her with the patient amusement of a cat who'd caught a particularly interesting mouse. Late 50s, silver hair impeccably styled, a suit that whispered expensive rather than shouted it. He looked like he should be managing a hedge fund, not running a criminal empire. "Ah, Miss Emerson, welcome back to consciousness. I apologize for the chloroform. My men can be overly cautious." His English was perfect, with just a trace of accent that made every word sound vaguely threatening. "Please, don't be alarmed. You're quite safe here." Charlotte's training kicked in. Diego and Marco had drilled her on this. Show fear but not panic, vulnerability but not weakness. Where am I? Somewhere Diego Sebastian will never find you, which I imagine comes as quite a relief given how poorly he treated you. Victor poured 2 glasses of what looked like very expensive vodka, sliding one across the desk toward her. "Drink. It'll help with the headache." Charlotte didn't touch it. Her mind was racing, trying to absorb details. The window behind Victor showed city lights. They were high up, maybe 20 stories. The door to her right was closed, probably guarded. To her left, bookshelves lined with volumes that looked more decorative than read. "I received your text," Charlotte said, her voice shaky. "But kidnapping seems like an aggressive recruitment strategy." Victor laughed, the sound genuinely amused. "Forgive the theatrics. Diego's people were watching your friend's apartment rather obviously. I needed to extract you before he changed his mind about firing you and decided you were more useful as leverage." "Leverage against who?" "Against me, of course." Victor leaned back, steepling his fingers. "Diego Sebastian and I have been playing chess for quite some time. He's competent, I'll grant him that. But he made a critical error. He let himself care about people. His daughter, his household staff." Victor's eyes sharpened. "You." "I was just the nanny. He fired me." "He fired you very publicly, very dramatically, in front of witnesses who he knew would report back to me. The question is why?" Victor picked up a tablet, swiping through what looked like surveillance photos. "These are from the past 3 weeks. You with Isabella, you with Diego, you in that estate learning its secrets. Do you know what I see?" Charlotte stayed silent. "I see a woman who Diego Sebastian trusts implicitly with the most valuable thing in his world. I see private moments, unguarded conversations, the kind of intimacy that doesn't develop in 3 weeks and less. Something deeper is happening." Victor set down the tablet. "I see a weakness that could destroy him." If he cared about me, he wouldn't have thrown me out. He threw you out because I forced his hand. The territorial concessions I demanded were just distraction. I was always going to take you regardless. By firing you first, he thought he was removing you from the game board, making you irrelevant to our conflict. Victor's smile was cold. But we both know you're anything but irrelevant. Don't we, Miss Emerson? Charlotte's heart hammered, but she kept her expression confused. I don't understand what you want from me. Information, access, everything you learned during your time in the Sebastian household, security protocols, routines, vulnerabilities. Victor stood, moving to the window with the casual confidence of a man in complete control. In exchange, I offer protection, employment, and the satisfaction of making Diego Sebastian pay for his disrespect. And if I refuse? Victor's reflection in the window smiled. Then you become significantly less valuable to me. And Miss Emerson, people who aren't valuable to me tend to have very short life expectancies. The threat was delivered casually, like discussing the weather. Charlotte felt genuine fear spike through her. This was the moment where her cover could crumble, where one wrong word could end everything. "What kind of information?" she asked, letting her voice shake. "Let's start simple. Security codes, guard rotations, Isabella's schedule. When does Diego spend time in his office? When is he vulnerable?" Victor turned from the window. "And most importantly, where does he keep his insurance?" Insurance. Every crime boss has insurance, evidence, documentation, leverage against their rivals and associates. Information that, if released, would destroy empires. Victor's eyes were hungry. Diego's insurance is legendary. 30 years of Sebastian family secrets, all compiled by his father. And added to by Diego. I want to know where he keeps it. Charlotte's mind raced. Diego had never mentioned any insurance, never hinted at hidden documentation. Either Victor was fishing, or there was a whole layer to Diego's operation she'd never seen. "I don't know about any insurance," Charlotte said honestly. "I was just the nanny. I didn't have access to his business operations." Victor studied her face, looking for lies. "Perhaps, or perhaps you're more clever than you appear. No matter, we have time to explore your knowledge thoroughly." The door opened and a woman entered, late 30s, severe expression, carrying a medical bag. "This is Dr. Ivanova," Victor said. "She's going to examine you, make sure my men didn't damage you during extraction. I need you healthy for what comes next." "What comes next?" "A video call with Diego, of course. He needs to see you're alive and well, understand that you're my guest now." Victor's smile was poisonous. "And he needs to know exactly what information you'll be providing me, so he can watch his empire crumble piece by piece, knowing he could have prevented it by simply being less sentimental." Dr. Ivanova's examination was clinical and thorough. She checked Charlotte's vitals, looked for injuries, asked questions in a bored monotone that suggested she'd done this many times before. When she reached Charlotte's back, her fingers paused at the spot where Marco had injected the tracker. Charlotte's breath caught. This was it, the moment where everything could fall apart. "Small infection," Dr. Ivanova said, her tone unchanged. Probably an ingrown hair. I'll clean it and apply antibiotic cream. Victor barely glanced over. Fine, finish quickly. Charlotte didn't dare relax. Had the doctor actually missed the tracker, or was she playing her own game? There was no way to know. 20 minutes later, Charlotte was cleaned up and sitting in front of a laptop, Victor positioned slightly off camera to her right. The video call connected, and suddenly Diego's face filled the screen. He looked terrible, exhausted, furious, barely controlled. When he saw Charlotte, something raw flashed across his expression before he locked it down. "Mr. Sebastian," Victor said pleasantly from off-screen. "As you can see, Miss Emerson is unharmed and comfortable. I wanted to assure you of her well-being before we begin negotiations." "Let her go, Victor. She's not part of this." "On the contrary, she's central to this. Miss Emerson has agreed to share her knowledge of your operations in exchange for my protection. Isn't that right, Charlotte?" All eyes turned to her. This was the performance that mattered. Convince Diego she was playing along while actually maintaining their plan. But looking at his face, seeing the genuine anguish there, Charlotte felt something crack inside her chest. "I'm sorry," she said, letting real tears form. "I can't go back there, not after," her voice broke convincingly. He made it clear I was nothing, just another employee to be discarded. Diego's jaw tightened, but his eyes, Charlotte caught something there. A message she couldn't quite read. "Very touching," Victor said. "Now let's discuss terms. Charlotte will remain my guest while she helps me understand Sebastian family operations. In exchange, you'll withdraw from the 3 territories we discussed and you'll leave her alone. No retaliation, no rescue attempts. Consider her the cost of doing business." "And if I refuse?" "Then Charlotte discovers that my hospitality has limits, and you discover what she looks like when those limits are exceeded." Victor's tone never changed, remaining pleasant and conversational. "I'd rather not damage her. She's more useful intact, but I will if you force my hand." Charlotte watched Diego's face cycle through rage, calculation, and something that looked like defeat. When he spoke, his voice was hollow. "Fine. The territories are yours, just don't hurt." "Sorry." "Excellent, I'm glad you're being reasonable." Victor leaned into frame. "Oh, and Diego, one more thing I know about the tracker." Charlotte's blood turned to ice. Victor's smile was triumphant. "Did you really think I wouldn't check thoroughly? Dr. Ivanova is many things, but careless isn't one of them." The moment she felt that subcutaneous device, she knew. "We removed it while Charlotte was being cleaned up. It's currently on a truck heading to Milwaukee, leading your teams on a very entertaining wild goose chase." On screen, Diego's expression went blank. "Victor, save your threats. Charlotte is mine now, and you have no idea where we are. Consider this a lesson in humility." Victor closed the laptop, ending the call. "Well, Miss Emerson, it seems your former employer cared more than he wanted to admit. Unfortunately for him, caring won't help him find you." Charlotte's mind raced. The tracker was gone. Diego's teams were following a truck to Milwaukee. She was completely on her own, in a building somewhere in Chicago, with no way to call for help. The panic must have shown on her face because Victor's expression softened slightly. "Don't despair. Cooperate fully and you'll be treated well. Resist and," he shrugged, "well, let's not explore that option." He left, the door closing behind him with a solid click. Charlotte heard the lock engage, heard footsteps outside. Guards, undoubtedly. She was trapped. For the first time since agreeing to this insane plan, Charlotte let herself feel the full weight of terror. She was alone in enemy territory with no backup, no communication, and a man who viewed her as nothing more than a tool to destroy Diego. "Okay," she whispered to herself. "Okay, think, what would Diego do?" Diego would find a weakness. Every system had one, every person, every organization. Victor was confident, maybe overconfident. That could be exploited. Charlotte stood, moving to the window. 20 floors up, no fire escape. Visible, the door was locked and guarded, but the room itself, she started searching methodically. The desk drawers were locked, but the bookshelves. There, a philosophy text that looked more worn than the others. She pulled it out, finding a hollow space behind it containing a phone. Not a regular phone, an old flip phone, the kind people used when they didn't want to be traced. Charlotte opened it carefully. One number in the contacts, no name, just LS. She hesitated. This could be a trap, could be exactly what Victor wanted her to find. Or it could be genuine, someone's hidden emergency contact, left behind and forgotten. Charlotte thought about Isabella, about Diego, about the fact that she was running out of options rapidly. She dialed the number. It rang twice before someone picked up. A woman's voice, young and scared. "Lena, is that you? Oh God, please let it be you." "This isn't Lena," Charlotte said quickly, keeping her voice low. "Who is this?" Silence, then, "Who are you? How did you get Lena's phone?" "I found it, hidden in a room where I'm being held. My name is Charlotte Emerson and I need help. Who's Lena?" "My sister." The woman's voice broke. "She was Victor's accountant. She called me 3 months ago, said she'd found something wrong with the books, something that proved Victor was stealing from his own partners. Then she disappeared. They said she ran away, but Lena wouldn't. She wouldn't just leave without telling me." Charlotte's heart pounded. "Where is she now?" "I don't know. Victor's people came to my apartment, said if I kept asking questions, I'd disappear too. But I've been trying to track her phone, hoping." The woman's voice hardened. "If you have her phone, you're in Victor's building. Which floor?" "I think 20, maybe 21, high up corner office." "That's Victor's private office, the one he uses for special guests." The woman's voice turned urgent. "You need to get out of there. That's where people go who don't come back." "I can't get out. The door is locked. There are guards." "Then you need to find what Lena found. Proof of Victor's theft. It's the only leverage you'll have." "Where would it be?" "Lena said it was all in the books, the physical books, not digital. Victor doesn't trust computers for his real accounting. Check the bookshelf, look for something out of place." Charlotte turned back to the shelves, scanning titles with new urgency. Most were classics, decorative. But there, one shelf had books that looked older, more worn. and one in particular, a thick leather-bound volume, was slightly askew. She pulled it out. Not a book at all, but a ledger. Pages and pages of handwritten numbers, dates, transactions. And highlighted in yellow on several pages, discrepancies. Money flowing out of the Volkov organization that didn't match the reported expenses. Millions of dollars over the course of years, all traced back to offshore accounts in Victor's name alone. He was embezzling from his own operation. I found it, Charlotte breathed into the phone. Lena was right, this is enough to get Victor killed by his own people, the woman said. His partners would execute him if they knew. That's why Lena disappeared. She was the only one who knew. Charlotte's mind raced. This was the leverage she needed, but it was also a death sentence. If Victor knew she'd found this. The door handle rattled. Someone's coming, Charlotte whispered urgently. What's your name? Svetlana. If you survive this, find me. Make Victor pay for what he did to my sister. The call ended. Charlotte shoved the phone back in its hiding spot, the ledger behind the books, and threw herself onto the chair just as the door opened. Victor entered with Dr. Ivanova, both of them looking satisfied. Good news, Miss Emerson. We've secured Diego's agreement to our terms. He's withdrawing from the disputed territories as we speak. Your leverage is being utilized. Perfectly. Charlotte forced herself to look defeated. So what happens to me now? Now, you continue helping me understand Sebastian's weaknesses. And once I've extracted everything useful, we'll discuss your long-term arrangements. Victor smiled. You might even come to enjoy working for me. I'm a far better employer than Diego ever was. Over the next 6 hours, Charlotte was questioned extensively about the Sebastian estate, security protocols, daily routines, Isabella's schedule. She fed them truth mixed with lies, enough to seem cooperative without giving anything genuinely damaging. All the while, her mind worked on the real problem. How to get word to Diego about the ledger, about Victor's embezzlement, about the weapon that could bring down the Volkov empire. The answer came at 3 a.m. during her 4th interview session. One of Victor's men brought in coffee, and Charlotte recognized him, one of the guards from outside Keisha's apartment. Young, maybe mid-20s, with the nervous energy of someone new to this life. When Victor stepped out to take a call, Charlotte took her chance. You don't look like the others, she said quietly to the young guard. You look like someone who still has a conscience. He shifted uncomfortably. I don't know what you mean. I mean, you look at me like I'm a person, not just cargo. That's rare in this business. Charlotte kept her voice gentle. What's your name? Dmitri. He glanced at the door. You shouldn't be talking to me. Dmitri, I need your help. Not to escape, I know that's impossible, but to get a message out. I can't. Victor is stealing from the organization. Millions of dollars. The proof is in this room, in those bookshelves. His partners don't know. Charlotte locked eyes with him. When they find out, everyone associated with Victor goes down, including you. Dimitri's face paled. You're lying. Look for yourself. 3rd shelf, leather-bound ledger behind the philosophy books. It's all there. Charlotte leaned forward. Or don't look and keep working for a man who's about to get everyone around him killed when his theft is discovered. The door opened and Victor returned, ending the conversation. But Charlotte had seen something in Dimitri's eyes: doubt, curiosity, fear. It was enough. The next morning, Charlotte was moved to a different room, still locked, still guarded but less luxurious. A holding cell, essentially, while Victor decided her ultimate fate. She'd been there for 2 hours when the building's fire alarm started screaming. Through the door, Charlotte heard shouting, running footsteps, chaos. The lock clicked and Dimitri appeared, his face grim. "I looked at the ledger," he said. "You were right, Victor's been stealing for years." He grabbed her arm. "There's a fire on the 10th floor, real one, started in the electrical room. Buildings evacuating. This is your chance." "Why are you helping me?" "Because I joined the Volkov family to make money, not to die for a thief's mistakes, and because—" He pressed something into her hand. "A phone. Someone's waiting for your call, numbers already dialed." Charlotte looked at the phone screen. Marco displayed with a Chicago number. She pressed call as Dimitri led her into the chaotic hallway. People were running. Smoke was beginning to fill the upper floors, and nobody was paying attention to one woman being escorted by a guard. "Charlotte," Marco's voice exploded through the phone. "Jesus Christ, are you okay? Where are you?" "Downtown somewhere, high-rise building, 20th floor. There's a fire, people are evacuating." "Stay on the line, we're tracking this call, we'll find you." Marco's voice was tense but controlled. "Get outside, get to the street. We have teams mobile and moving." Dimitri led her to the stairwell, packed with people fleeing the fire. They pushed through the crowd, going down, always down, Charlotte's lungs burning from smoke and exertion. At the 15th floor, someone grabbed her arm. Charlotte spun to find Dr. Ivanova, her eyes cold and knowing. "Clever girl," the doctor said. "Victor will be so disappointed." Dimitri moved to intervene, but Dr. Ivanova was faster, producing a syringe from her pocket. One more step, and she gets enough sedative to stop her heart. They froze. The stairwell was emptying out, people rushing past them, and Charlotte realized they were about to be left alone with a woman who'd killed before and wouldn't hesitate to do it again. "The ledger," Charlotte said quickly. "I know where it is. I can show you." Dr. Ivanova's expression didn't change. "Victor already has it. He moved it last night after he realized someone had been in his office. Then he knows about the embezzlement, which means he knows you knew." Charlotte was gambling now, reading the doctor's face. "How long have you been helping him steal? How long before his partners figure out you're complicit?" Something flickered in Dr. Ivanova's eyes: fear. "She's right," Dimitri said. "Victor's going to sacrifice everyone to save himself. He always does." The syringe lowered slightly. "What are you proposing?" "Help me get out. I have connections with Diego Sebastian. He's at war with Victor anyway. Give him the proof of the embezzlement and Victor's own people will tear him apart. You walk away clean." Dr. Ivanova studied Charlotte's face, calculating odds. Then, abruptly, she pocketed the syringe. "10th floor. Go out the service entrance in the back. Victor's people are watching the main exits." They ran. At the 10th floor, the source of the fire, they encountered actual flames now, smoke thick enough to choke on. Dmitri led them through a kitchen that was mercifully empty, through a service corridor, and finally to a door marked "Staff Only." Outside, the night air was sharp and clean. Charlotte gasped it in, her eyes watering from smoke and relief. Behind them, the building was ablaze, fire trucks. Arriving, chaos spreading. There, Dmitri pointed to a black SUV screeching to a halt at the corner. The door flew open and Marco leaped out, followed by Diego. Charlotte didn't remember deciding to run. She just ran, closing the distance between them, and then Diego's arms were around her, crushing her against his chest with an intensity that drove the air from her lungs. "You're alive," he breathed against her hair. "Christ, Charlotte, you're alive." She was crying, she realized. Full-body sobs that she hadn't allowed herself when she was captive, when she had to be strong and clever and brave. Now, in the safety of Diego's embrace, she could fall apart. "The tracker," she managed. "He found it." "I know, we thought we'd lost you." Diego pulled back just enough to cup her face, his eyes scanning her for injuries. "But you called, you found a way out. How?" Charlotte turned to Dmitri and Dr. Ivanova, who'd followed at a distance. "They helped, and I found something, proof. That Victor's been embezzling from his own organization, enough to destroy him." Diego's eyes sharpened. "Where is it?" "He has it. He moved it last night." Charlotte felt despair threaten. "We were so close." "I have copies," Dr. Ivanova said, pulling out a USB drive. "Insurance, in case Victor decided I was a liability. Every transaction, every account number, every theft over 7 years." Diego stared at the drive like it was the Holy Grail. Then he looked at Marco. "Get this to Konstantin Volkov, Victor's cousin and biggest rival in the family. Make sure he knows exactly who's been stealing from the organization." "Boss, if we do that." "Victor Volkov will be dead within 24 hours, executed by his own people. Problem solved." Diego's voice was cold with satisfaction. "And we don't even have to lift a finger." An explosion rocked the building behind them, gas line probably. The fire was spreading and emergency services were scrambling. In the chaos, no one noticed. One black SUV leaving the scene. Diego kept Charlotte close during the ride back to the estate, one arm around her shoulders like he was afraid she'd disappear. Charlotte leaned into him, exhausted beyond measure, running on fumes and adrenaline. "I have to tell you something," she said quietly. "About Lena, Victor's accountant. She's probably dead, killed because she found out about the embezzlement. There's a sister, Svetlana, who deserves to know. We'll find her, tell her what her sister did, how she helped bring down Victor." Diego's voice was rough. "Lena will be remembered." Back at the estate, the sun was rising, painting the grounds in gold and pink. Charlotte had been gone less than 24 hours, but it felt like a lifetime. Rosa met them at the door, tears streaming down her face. "Isabella's been crying for you all night. She wouldn't let anyone comfort her." Charlotte ran. The nursery door was open, and inside, Isabella was awake in her crib, her face blotchy from crying. When she saw Charlotte, her eyes went wide. Char, the baby's arms reached out desperately. Char, Char, Char. Charlotte scooped her up, and Isabella clung to her like a barnacle, sobbing into her shoulder. I'm here, sweet girl, I'm here. I'm sorry I left. I'm so sorry. She thought you abandoned her, Rosa said softly from the doorway. Like her mother, she didn't understand. Charlotte rocked Isabella, singing the old lullabies, letting her own tears fall into the baby's soft hair. Never, I'll never leave you, I promise. Behind them, Diego watched from the doorway, his expression unguarded for once. When Isabella finally calmed enough to notice him, she reached out one hand. Dada char stay. It wasn't quite a sentence, but the meaning was clear. Both of you, together, don't leave me. Diego moved closer, and suddenly the three of them were in a tangle. Charlotte holding Isabella, Diego's arms around them both. A family that had formed in the strangest, most dangerous way possible. Stay, Isabella insisted again. I'm not going anywhere, Charlotte promised. Neither am I, Diego added. Then, looking at Charlotte over Isabella's head, any of us. We're done running, done hiding, done playing defense. This is our family now, all of us. Charlotte met his eyes, seeing the promise there. Not just about Isabella, but about them. About what they'd become to each other without quite meaning to. All of us, Charlotte agreed. 3 days later, news broke about Viktor Volkov's death, executed by his own organization after evidence of massive embezzlement surfaced. The story made headlines for approximately 12 hours before being buried under more pressing news. In Chicago's underworld, the story lasted longer, becoming a cautionary tale about greed and betrayal. Diego attended the funeral, a political necessity to show respect to the new Volkov leadership. He came home looking tired but satisfied. It's over, he told Charlotte. That evening, as they watched Isabella play with blocks in the nursery, Konstantin Volkov sent his regards and assurances that the Sebastian family has no further concerns from their organization. Just like that. Just like that, Victor made enemies of everyone by stealing from the collective funds. His death actually improved relations across the families. Diego shook his head. There's a lesson there about karma, I think. Or about how evil eventually eats itself, Charlotte suggested. They fell into comfortable silence, watching Isabella build and destroy towers with equal enthusiasm. These moments had become Charlotte's favorite, the quiet evenings when the danger receded, and they were just two adults and a baby, playing at being a family. Except they weren't playing anymore, Charlotte realized. Somewhere along the way, the pretense had become reality. I want to tell you something, Diego said, his voice careful. About what you did going into Victor's organization. It was insane and reckless and brilliant, and I aged about 10 years in the time you were gone. But it also reminded me of something I'd forgotten, that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is trust someone else to be brave. You didn't wait for me to rescue you, you rescued yourself and brought down Victor in the process. Diego turned to look at her directly. "You're extraordinary, Charlotte Emerson. And he paused, seeming to struggle with words that didn't come naturally to him. "I'm grateful you walked into Bella not that night. Grateful you didn't run when any sane person would have. Grateful you're here." Charlotte felt warmth bloom in her chest. "I'm grateful, too, for all of it, even the terrifying parts. Even the interrogation." "Okay, maybe not that part. That sucked." Diego laughed, and Isabella looked up at the sound, delighted. "Dada happy." "Yes, Piccola, Dada's happy." Diego scooped her up, tossing her gently in the air in a way that would have terrified him 3 weeks ago. Isabella shrieked with joy. Watching them together, Charlotte felt something settle in her soul, a sense of rightness, of purpose, of home. This strange, dangerous, beautiful life they'd built together wasn't what she'd planned. It wasn't safe or conventional or anything her grandmother would have approved of. But it was theirs. That night, after Isabella was asleep and the estate had settled into its nighttime rhythms, Charlotte found Diego in his office. Not working, just sitting in the dark, staring at nothing. "Can't sleep?" she asked from the doorway. He looked up, a slight smile crossing his face. "Come in, I'm just thinking." Charlotte entered, closing the door behind her. The office felt different at night, less intimidating, more intimate. She sat in the chair across from his desk, the same chair where she'd been interrogated what felt like a lifetime ago. "What are you thinking about?" Diego was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Vanessa used to say I was afraid of happiness, that I'd learned to expect tragedy so well that I couldn't recognize joy when it was right in front of me." Was she right? Probably. I spent so long preparing for the worst that I forgot to hope for anything better. Diego leaned forward, his eyes intense in the dim light. "But these past few weeks, watching you with Isabella, watching you risk everything for her, for us, I started to remember what hope feels like." Charlotte's heart hammered. "Diego." "I'm not good at this," he interrupted. "Feelings, vulnerability, all of it. I'm much better at threats and negotiations and violence. But I need you to know," he stood, moving around the desk to stand in front of her. "You're not just Isabella's nanny. You're not just an employee. You're family," Charlotte finished softly, standing to meet him. "I know, I feel it too." Diego's hand came up to cup her cheek, his touch gentle despite the calluses from years of fighting. "More than family." "Charlotte, The words seemed to stick in his throat, decades of conditioning warring with what he was trying to say. Charlotte smiled, reaching up to cover his hand with hers. "I know you don't have to say it yet. We have time." "Do we?" Diego's eyes were vulnerable in a way she'd never seen. "In my world, time is never guaranteed. People I care about are going to be fine," Charlotte said firmly. "We're going to be fine, all of us, because we're stronger together than apart, and because you're not your father, and because love isn't weakness. It's the only thing worth fighting for." Diego pulled her close then, not desperately like after her rescue, but deliberately like he was claiming something precious. When he kissed her, it was soft and searching, a question and an answer all at once. Charlotte kissed him back, letting herself fall into it, into him, into this impossible future they were building together. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Diego rested his forehead against hers. "I don't deserve you." "Probably not, but you're stuck with me anyway." "Thank God for that." They stayed like that for a long moment, holding each other in the darkness, two broken people who'd somehow found a way to fit together. From down the hall came a cry, Isabella, awake and wanting attention. They broke apart, both smiling at the familiar sound. "Duty calls," Charlotte said. "Our daughter has terrible timing," Diego replied, and Charlotte felt her heart skip at the casual hour. Not his daughter, not the baby, but theirs. A family in truth, not just in function. They walked to the nursery together, and when Isabella saw them both, her face lit up with pure joy. "Mama, Dada." Charlotte froze. Did she just? "She called you Mama," Diego said, wonder in his voice. "She's never, with any of the others, she never." Charlotte lifted Isabella from the crib, tears streaming down her face. "Hey, sweet girl. Hey, baby." "Mama," Isabella said, again patting Charlotte's cheeks with sticky hands. "Mama here, Dada here, good." "Yes," Charlotte managed through tears. "We're here, both of us, always." Diego wrapped his arms around them both, and they stood like that in the dim nursery. A mafia boss, a former cleaning woman, and a baby who'd brought them together through sheer force of need and love. It wasn't the family any of them had expected. It was better. 6 months later, Charlotte stood in the gardens watching Isabella chase butterflies with the determination of a tiny, wobbly linebacker. At 24 months, Bella was walking confidently, talking in short sentences, and had apparently decided that her life's mission was to befriend every living creature on the estate. "No, Bella, the koi don't want hugs," Charlotte called as Isabella made another run at the pond. Marco intercepted her smoothly, lifting the giggling toddler away from the water. "Boss is going to put a fence around this pond." "Boss said that 6 months ago," Charlotte replied, moving to take Isabella. "Boss says a lot of things. Following through on toddler proofing seems to be harder than running a criminal empire." Diego's voice came from behind them. "I heard that, Marco." Marco grinned, unrepentant. "Just keeping you honest, boss." Diego joined them by the pond, and Isabella immediately reached for him. "Dada, fish." "Yes, Piccola, fish. But we look at the fish, we don't swim with them." "Why?" "Because Mama said so." "Oh." Isabella accepted this with the easy logic of a toddler who'd learned that Mama's rules were absolute. Charlotte smiled at the easy way Diego deflected to her authority now. 6 months ago, he would have tried to explain fish biology and pond safety. Now he understood that, because Mama said so, was sometimes the only answer needed. They walked back toward the house together, Marco trailing at a discreet distance. Inside, Rosa had lunch ready, and they settled into the comfortable routine that had developed. Isabella in her high chair, food everywhere, conversation flowing easily. This was life now. Not perfect, not always safe, but real and solid in theirs. After lunch, while Isabella napped, Diego pulled Charlotte into his office. She went willingly, curious about the unusual midday summons. "I have something for you," Diego said, pulling a small velvet box from his desk drawer. Charlotte's breath caught. "Diego." "Before you panic, it's not what you think. Or maybe it is, but not officially yet." He opened the box to reveal not a ring, but a key, ornate, silver, old-fashioned. "This is the key to the estate, the master key that opens every door, every safe, every locked room." Charlotte stared at it, understanding the weight of what he was offering. This is about more than doors. It's about trust, complete trust. Diego took the key out, holding it between them. "My father gave this to my mother on their wedding day, told her she was now keeper of the family's secrets, guardian of its future. When she died, he gave it to me." "Diego, I can't." "You already are," he interrupted gently. "You're already the keeper of our secrets, the guardian of our daughter's future. This just makes it official." He pressed the key into her palm, closing her fingers around it. "Charlotte Emerson, you walked into my life because a baby wouldn't stop crying. You stayed because you're stubborn and brave and too good for any of us. And somewhere along the way, you became the center of everything that matters." Charlotte felt tears prick her eyes. "I love you. I know we haven't said it officially, but I need you to know." "I love you too," Diego said, the words coming easier than she'd expected. "I fought it, tried to convince myself it was just gratitude or convenience or Isabella needing a mother figure. But Charlotte, I'm in love with you. Completely, terrifyingly in love with you." She kissed him then, hard and fierce, the key pressed between their joined hands. When they broke apart, both were smiling. "So this key," Charlotte said, looking at it properly now. "Does this mean I can finally know what's in that locked room on the third floor? The one Vincent always changes the subject about." Diego laughed. "That's my father's old wine collection. About $3 million worth of vintage bottles that I keep meaning to either drink or sell, but never get around to." $3 million in wine. My father had expensive taste and poor impulse control. I inherited one of those traits. "Which one?" "You tell me." Charlotte pretended to consider. "Well, you did hire a nanny based on a 3-minute interaction in a restaurant, so I'm going with poor impulse control." "Best impulse I ever had," Diego said, pulling her close again. They were interrupted by Isabella's voice through the baby monitor. "Mama, Dada, up." Nap time apparently was over. They went together to get their daughter, and as Charlotte scooped up the sleepy, cranky toddler, she caught sight of their reflection in the nursery mirror. Diego's arm around her waist, Isabella nestled against her chest, all three of them together. A family. Not the one she'd imagined when she was cleaning tables at Bella Knot, dreaming of social work and helping people. But a family she'd fight to protect, die to defend, and choose again and again if given the chance. "Story," Isabella demanded, already perking up now that she had an audience. They settled on the nursery floor, Isabella between them, and Diego pulled out her current favorite book, a battered copy of The Velveteen Rabbit that Rosa swore had been his when he was small. As Diego read in that deep, steady voice, doing all the character voices that made Isabella giggle. Charlotte felt a peace she'd never known before. This was what her grandmother meant when she talked about finding your purpose. Not a job or a career, but a place where you belonged so completely that everything before felt like preparation. Her phone buzzed, a text from Keisha. Coffee next week. I need to hear all the details about your mysterious new life. Charlotte smiled, typing back. Definitely. Fair warning, it's complicated. Girl, your whole life is complicated. That's what makes it interesting. True enough, Charlotte thought. She'd gone from invisible cleaning woman to the center of a mafia boss's world. She'd been kidnapped, had helped bring down a criminal empire, and somewhere in all that chaos, she'd fallen in love with the most unexpected person imaginable. Her life was complicated, dangerous, and nothing like what she'd planned. It was also exactly where she was meant to be. That evening, after Isabella was asleep and the house had settled into its nighttime quiet, Charlotte stood on the balcony outside her room, which had gradually become their room, though neither had officially acknowledged the transition. Diego found her there, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. Against the autumn chill. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, joining her at the railing. "About that night at Bella Knot. How I almost didn't walk over to your table. How I almost just kept cleaning and minding my own business like my grandmother always told me to." "I'm glad you didn't." "Me too, but Diego, I need you to know something." Charlotte turned to face him. "I didn't stay just for Isabella. I love her, obviously, but that's not the only reason I'm here." "I know." "Do you? Because sometimes I think you still believe you manipulated me into this with money or security or some kind of Stockholm syndrome." Diego's expression turned serious. "Maybe at first I told myself that. It was easier than admitting I needed you, that Isabella needed you, that we were both drowning and you threw us a lifeline." "You weren't drowning, you were learning." "I was terrified. Of failing her, of becoming my father, of loving her too much, and having that love used against me." Diego took Charlotte's hands. "You taught me that the fear was worth it, that loving someone completely is terrifying and dangerous, and the only thing that makes any of this worthwhile." A smooth talker. "I've been practicing." Charlotte laughed, the sound carrying across the quiet gardens. "So what happens now? We just keep going, raising Isabella, avoiding rival families, pretending we're a normal family." "We stop pretending," Diego said. "We make it official. Marriage, adoption papers for you and Isabella, the whole thing. No more ambiguity, no more questions about where you fit in this family." Charlotte's heart hammered. "Is that a proposal?" "That's me stating my intentions. The actual proposal will be better. I've been planning it for 2 months. Rosa's helping, which means it'll be embarrassingly sentimental and probably involve way too many roses." "I love roses." "I know. You also love those terrible romance novels you think I don't know about. Coffee with way too much cream and singing off-key when you think no one's listening." Charlotte felt her face heat. "You've been paying attention." "Charlotte, I've been obsessed with you since that first night when you walked over to my table like you weren't afraid of anything. Paying attention is the minimum." "For the record," Charlotte said, moving closer, "I was terrified. I'm still terrified most of the time, but being with you with Isabella, it's worth the fear." Diego kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "So when I do propose properly, with the roses and the sentimentality and probably Marco playing violin in the background, because Rosa thinks that's romantic." "Marco plays violin." "Apparently, I'm as surprised as you are, but when I propose you'll say yes." Charlotte pretended to consider. "Will there be a dramatic speech about how I've changed your life and made you believe in love again?" "Probably, roses." "Writing it." "Then yes, yes, I'll say yes." They stayed on the balcony until the autumn night grew too cold to ignore, talking about the future, about Isabella's education, about whether they wanted more children, about how to balance Diego's business with their family life. It was all so normal, so domestic, so far removed from the danger and chaos that had brought them together. And yet, Charlotte knew the danger would never fully go away. Diego's world was what it was, and loving him meant accepting that reality. But she'd also learned that she was stronger than she thought, braver than she believed, and capable of protecting the people she loved with a fierceness that surprised even her. 3 weeks later, Diego proposed exactly as predicted. Too many roses, embarrassing sentimentality, and yes, Marco playing violin with surprising skill. Isabella helped by trying to eat the ring and shouting, "Mama, say yes," throughout the entire speech Rosa had written. Charlotte said yes, through tears and laughter, and when Diego slipped the ring on her finger, a stunning emerald surrounded by diamonds that had belonged to his mother, she felt the final piece of her new life click into place. The wedding was small and private, held in the estate gardens with only the household staff and a few trusted associates in attendance. Isabella served as flower girl and took her job very seriously, throwing petals with the concentration of someone diffusing a bomb. When Charlotte walked down the makeshift aisle, she didn't think about the unconventional path that had brought her here. She didn't think about her grandmother's warnings or her old dreams of social work, or the fact that she was marrying a man whose business dealings she still didn't fully understand. She thought about Diego's face when he saw her, the wonder and love and relief all mixed together. She thought about Isabella, already calling her mama with the casual confidence of a child who knows she's loved. She thought about the family they'd built from chaos and fear, and an extraordinary amount of stubbornness. "You're sure about this?" Diego whispered as she reached him. "I've never been more sure of anything," Charlotte whispered back. The ceremony was brief. Neither of them were people who enjoyed lengthy formalities. But when the officiant pronounced them married and Diego kissed her, Charlotte felt the rightness of it down to her bones. This was her family, her future, her home. Isabella chose that moment to tug on Charlotte's dress. "Mama, Dada, cake now." The guests laughed and Diego scooped up his daughter. "Yes, Piccola, cake now." As they walked back toward the house, Diego carrying Isabella, Charlotte's hand in his, she caught Rosa's eye. The older woman was crying happy tears, and she mouthed, "Perfect." It was perfect. Not in the conventional sense, not in any way Charlotte's 22-year-old self would have imagined, but perfect for them, for this strange and wonderful family they'd become. That night, after the celebration wound down and Isabella was finally asleep after an evening of cake and excitement, Charlotte and Diego stood in the nursery doorway watching their daughter sleep. "Mrs. Sebastian," Diego said softly, testing out her new name. "That's going to take some getting used to," Charlotte admitted. "We have time." They did have time. Time to watch Isabella grow, time to build their life together, time to navigate the complicated waters of Diego's world while protecting the innocent joy of their daughter. It wouldn't always be easy. There would be challenges, dangers, moments when Charlotte questioned this choice. But looking at Diego, at Isabella, at the family they'd forged from the most unlikely circumstances, Charlotte knew she'd make the same choice again and again. A baby had cried in a restaurant. A cleaner had said she just needed a mom. And from that simple moment, everything had changed. "I love you," Charlotte said, leaning against Diego's shoulder. "I love you too," he replied, "both of you, my whole world." Isabella stirred in her sleep, murmuring something that sounded like "Mama, Dada, stay." "Always," they whispered together, "always." And in the morning, when Isabella woke demanding breakfast and stories and attention, they would be there. Just as they would be there for first days of school and skinned knees and teenage rebellion and college graduations and every moment in between. Because Charlotte Emerson, now Charlotte Sebastian, had learned something important in the chaos of the past year. Sometimes the family you choose is stronger than the family you're born into. Sometimes love finds you in the most unexpected places. And sometimes a crying baby in a restaurant is exactly what you need to change your life forever. What a journey we've been on together. Thank you for investing your time and heart in Charlotte, Diego, and little Isabella's story. If their tale of unexpected love and second chances moved you, please like this video and subscribe so you never miss another heartwarming story. Tomorrow brings a new adventure, and I can't wait to share it with you. Until then, my beautiful family, remember that sometimes love finds us in the most unexpected places.